Welcome. It's good to see everybody. Welcome to the Commission regular meeting. Today is Tuesday, November 27th, 2018 at 6 p.m. We're in the city chambers. Those present are Commissioner Luke, Vice Mayor McDowell, myself, Mayor Hanks, Commissioner Emmerich. We have City Attorney Amber Slayton, City Manager Lear. We have our police chief here in the back, Garrison, our fire chief, Scott Titus, and we have our city clerk, Miss Katie Pidone. If you would please remember to turn off your cell phones or put them on vibrate. And let's go ahead and stand for the Pledge of Allegiance led by Vice Mayor.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we seek, we don't have an invocation. I'd just like to go ahead and open in prayer. Heavenly Father, we ask you for guidance, wisdom, and support as we begin this meeting. Help us to engage in meaningful discussion, bring us closer as a group, and that we would continue to be actively nurturing the bonds of community. Fill us, Lord, with your grace as we make decisions that will affect the citizens of this city and the staff of this municipality. Remind us that all we do today, all we accomplish for the greater glory of you and for the service of humanity. In Jesus' name, amen. So can I get an approval of the agenda?
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Luke, seconded by Vice Mayor. Let's call the vote.
Wait. I'm sorry. Mayor, I'm sorry. I wasn't looking at my notes. I need to pull items C and D from general business.
Now, I was going to do that. Was that, do we do that before the approval?
My motion.
I'll pull the second.
All right, sorry. Sorry,
I
guys.
forgot about
My first
that.
day as
Thank you.
mayor.
Yes.
I'll make a motion, Mayor, to approve the agenda as presented, pulling items number 6C and 6D, like David.
And I'll second.
6C and 6D.
Yes.
I'm trying.
So we're approving the entire thing?
We're approving the entire agenda
Are we-
except for 6C and 6D to pull.
And clarifying that includes the consent.
No,
We'll vote on that later. We're just approving
we're approving the agenda.
which ones to go through.
Okay, let's call the vote.
Did you do it?
I couldn't press the motion button.
Mine, okay, I got a motion.
Well, I made the motion and it came up
Right.
second.
That was approved, 4-0. We want to look at the consent agenda.
Can I make another motion for 6D? That is the youth council. I'd like to make a motion on that.
We just pulled it.
I understand. I'd like to give city manager direction on how to place it on a future meeting.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion to instruct the city manager to place this item on one of the Monday special / workshop meetings, not on a regular commission meeting.
I'll second.
Okay, anything to the motion, Vice Mayor?
Can you push?
We need to have some time, and I don't want this to be rushed by putting it on a regular commission meeting.
I agree.
Okay.
It's too involved.
It's much too
Call
involved.
the vote.
Mayor, on that, if you want to do that, I'm going to be inclined to amend the 12/3 meeting so it doesn't have to wait all the way till January. I'd like to add it to that meeting then. If that's 12/3, it's a 1 o'clock special meeting. If that meets what you're looking for, or no, I'm not, sorry, not 12/3, 12/6.
Thank you.
Sorry, I got
I was
my
like,
dates messed
Do you
up.
want to have ULDC and tree ordinance and youth advisory board? What, you
I
want to
know,
kill your
yes.
staff?
Faith in you guys. No, I meant 12/6. I apologize for that.
Right.
It would be the 12/6 that just went out. We'll probably amend it to add both of these items to it. we'll amend the agenda tomorrow, but I really don't want that to wait any longer than it already has. So if you're okay with that, that's the special meeting that I'm going to shoot for rather than wait till January.
The 12/6 meeting, what time did you have it already planning to start?
I believe it's starting at 1 o'clock.
To start at 11 then, to accommodate these two items? Because this youth council one is a big item.
I'll look and see what's on there. I don't remember off the top of my head. It was literally just posted.
I don't believe it was overly heavy.
There's not a lot on it. No, I think 1 o'clock should probably be fine.
So I'll withdraw my motion if
Okay,
I'll
I'll
make a new
withdraw
one.
a second.
I'll make a new motion to have the city manager place these two items, 6C and 6D, on a meeting of December 6th, starting either at 11 o'clock or keeping it at 1 o'clock start.
Second.
Call the vote.
Thank you for indulging me, Mayor.
That passes 4-0. So looking at consent, is there anything that we want to pull?
On consent, Mayor, I'd like to pull B as in boy and E as in Edward.
Commissioner Lou?
Nothing.
Commissioner Emmerich? Nope, we're all good, okay.
Oh, and just, city manager, staff does not need to stay for B.
Announcements. City clerk?
We have a motion to approve the consent agenda, pulling those two items.
Oh.
No, we don't
We don't.
usually do that until the end of the meeting.
Okay.
We're just letting him know if staff needs to stay, if there was something big.
Okay, thank you. We have the current vacancies on the following boards and committees: the Art Advisory Board, the Audit Committee, the Beautification and Tree Scenic Highway Committee, the Charter Review Advisory Board, Citizens Tax Oversight Committee, Community Economic Development Advisory Board, the Environmental Advisory Board, Historic and Cultural Advisory Board, Joint Management Advisory Board, Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, Planning and Zoning Advisory Board, Public Utility Advisory Board, and the Zoning Board of Appeals. We have the following upcoming expirations for the advisory boards and committees: Beautification and Tree Scenic Highway Committee, Charter Review Advisory Board, Community Economic Development Advisory Board, the Firefighter Pensions Board of Trustees, Joint Management Advisory Board, Public Utility Advisory Board, and there is one position for a Northport resident to serve on the Sarasota Manatee Metropolitan Planning Organization, Tamiami Trails Scenic Highway Committee. So if anybody would like any information, they can come see us at the city clerk's office. Thank you.
Thank you. We're moving on to public comment.
There you go, Mayor.
I'm going to call these first three, if you just go ahead and line up. We have Frederick Cohane, Anthony McChesney, and Samantha Gentrip. Right over here, sir. Thank you.
Looking at this podium over here on your right.
Just state your name for the record. Once you get up there.
Hi, my name is Fred Cohane. I live over on Sable Trace. I bought over there maybe about 2 years ago, and I'm happy to be in Northport. I'm considered a nice town. My concern is actually the trash and litter along 41 in particular. Every morning I walk the dog to Northport, down 41, back down Sumter, back to Sable, where I am. It's roughly a 3-mile loop. And what I've noticed in the last year or so, is the amount of debris on the side of the road. And I'm not sure that there's a service road there along 41 opposite Lowe's. It says Tamiami Trail, which I always thought was 41. So I don't know if it has the same name or not. But in particular, I want to tell what I've observed, and then if there's any way I can help. So I assume some of it's private, like the fast food places, but some of it I'm sure is public. So for instance, there's a little gazebo there opposite 14400, the VIP Care, not far from Lowe's. It's obvious that the trash cans at that gazebo, they haven't been emptied in God knows how long, because the trash on the ground is actually bleached from the sun, the labels on it, so it's been there like forever. If you continue down, if you get towards Taco Bell and KFC, which are owned by Yum Corporation, which is like Yummy, but just Y-U-M, $2 billion company, their lots are filthy. And today I just looked, because I wanted to come over here tonight. If you look at KFC and you look at Taco Bell, no trash cans in the parking lot at all. Burger King has no cans. Pizza Hut has one. And Popeyes, which just opened, they have 4 cans in their lot, and the lot is very clean, which I thought was an interesting observation. On the public side, you know, opposite Lowe's, there's so much trash there, and it's obvious that the lawnmower people, I assume that's not part of their job description, is picking up trash. But it's just been chopped over. You got fine bits of plastic and debris. There's a bright yellow towel there. It's like the color of that speaker timer over there. It's been there a month. It's just laying there. So it's really an eyesore, and you know, I think we should do better as a city. So one of my questions is, and what do I have, 2 minutes, 3 minutes? One of my questions is that when a business gets their charter, their permit, their license, whatever the nomenclature is there some kind of requirement that they have waste receptacles, and an appropriate number of waste receptacles? And if not, perhaps it's something you could look into. Also, there are no signs. Like some areas we see signs, no litter, no dumping, things like that. I don't know if there's a requirement on that. You know, maybe
Sir,
something.
Go ahead and wrap up. Your time is up.
Oh, okay. Anyway, what I would just say is that if I would be willing to help on this, but I don't want to just be some old guy who's an environmental nut job, but you know, to contact perhaps these corporate offices, you know, to buy 4 garbage cans, you know, $250 a piece, max, it's $1,000, and for a $2 billion company, it's nothing. And I think if we contacted those people, you know, there are many possible remedies, you know, that they could assume some responsibility as well. And like I say, I don't know what, you know.
City Manager, would you mind, just to help answer some of his questions, get somebody with him and maybe kind of instruct him on how that works in the area, and take some of his insight. He may have some great insight.
Sir, we'll get in touch with
To
them.
see him on the beautification committee where the beautification campaign's going on.
Well, I'd be glad to do that. And I mean, I know how to write a letter, but like I say, as an individual, you know, you can say, who the heck's this guy? But I think if it came on official stationery, you would get somebody's attention. And even if it's not their role, I would think as a good citizen, you know, making lots of money off the town of Northport, you know, Yum Corporation or Pizza Hut or Kentucky
Thank you,
Fried
sir.
Chicken would be more than happy to get in your good graces.
Thank you, sir.
Okay? All right, thank you. Sorry I ran over.
No, you're fine. State your name for the record.
Anthony McChesney. Hi, thanks for your time here, allowing me to speak. I'm a concerned citizen of this area and a member of the environmental group Hands Along the Water here. And we are proposing to this city to consider investing a way to develop an industry that will not only recycle plastics, but will also create more jobs for the people here. Northport has a great opportunity right now to become a leader in protecting our precious Florida. An important reason for this is because China passed a policy banning plastic waste imported into their country. For more than 25 years, many countries, including the United States, have been sending massive amounts of plastic waste to China. As of 2017, China passed a policy banning plastic materials being imported into their country for the protection of the environment and people's health. This policy took action in January 2018. Also, a major concern is that microplastics are invading our food. As of September 4th, 2018, scientists discovered that dissolved plastics in the ocean are now being found in marine life in which we consume. Scientists have observed signs of physical damage, such as inflammation to organ walls and liver damage and marine life, which can potentially affects us in the same way. So the city could collect plastics from the public to transport to the Northport facility. A great way to achieve this would be to educate the public on proper ways to recycle materials. One way to accomplish this issue would be to apply stickers to the recycling bins showing exactly how and what to do with your materials. You know, for example, for many years I didn't know the proper way to recycle. I would throw my dirty food containers in there thinking that they're getting washed somehow magically and recycled, but they all of that ends up in the landfill. And so I think education to the public is key. In summary, being a member of the environmental group Hands Along the Water has opened my eyes to many issues in our environment, such as importance of recycling. I found that there is a recycled plastic company located right here in Englewood, Florida. This local company buys recycled plastic and manufactures many products such as picnic tables, benches, chairs, marine products. We as people need to change our whole perception of the way we are living and start showing respect for our ocean and land. This should be the first priority before making any decisions on any further moves we make, whether it be from clear-cutting land for development to using reusable bags for shopping, and of course to recycling our garbage. Please consider purchasing commercial land or use an existing building for this cause of plastic recycling.
Thank you, sir.
Recycled material can be sold to a local company.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Can maybe somebody from Solid Waste get with our citizen to explain how we do our education campaigns for recycling and that we already do have recycling of plastics?
Yeah.
Is that thank you.
Just really quick, I'm going to call Nadine Baker, Brian Kelly, and Joan San Luis. Thank you. Go ahead and state your name for the record.
Hi, my name is Samantha Gentrup, and I would like to thank Tony for speaking on that. I'm here to talk about Red Tide, but the plastics is crucial. My name is Samantha, and I'm also with Hands Along the Water. We are a group of Floridians that are very concerned about what's happening to the water and to the marine life and possibly human health in our state. We've all been affected one way or another by this environmental crisis we're facing, and we're dedicated to helping our local government find and implement solutions. There are actually 6 of us here today to speak. We're going to help introduce a statewide policy that is vital to curbing and preventing toxic algae blooms of the magnitude we've seen this year. And it seems like just when we think it possibly could be getting better, we've got dozens of dolphins and marine animals washing up again. And it's very heartbreaking. To kind of introduce this statewide policy, I want to begin with the claim, we've all heard it, but red tide is naturally occurring. Well, we all understand that toxic and harmful algae blooms are naturally occurring. We're not arguing against that, but it is indisputable that this toxic algae is being fed by nutrients. Specifically nitrogen and phosphorus. Those are the 2 nutrients. And they basically serve as fuel, and they make these toxic algae blooms more intense and prolonged. They last longer. In fact, recent research of historic red tide data by the University of Miami found that both the abundance and the duration of Carina brevis, that's the red tide, have increased significantly along our shoreline of Southwest Florida in the past 50 years. There's Water Atlas data showing this, increase in nitrogen. The study concluded that greater nutrient availability in the ecosystem is the most likely cause of this increase in the Carina brevis biomass. And these nutrients are coming primarily from the large increase in human population that we've seen in Southwest Florida and the other activities in South Florida over the past 50 years, half century. We are hoping that our local organizations do come up with a solution to address these blooms once they happen. but we genuinely feel that it is part of the responsibility of our local government to put policies in place to limit these nutrients before they head to our Gulf and feed the toxic algae. So we're asking that you listen to us today and hear our concerns as constituents for asking for a solution. And we want you to know that we're asking for your help, but we're also standing here saying we will help you. We've got your back. We will provide volunteers. We will do the footwork. We'll do whatever's needed. We're here for you. We just ask you to meet us halfway, please.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Nadine, please state your name for the record.
Hello, my name is Nadine Baker, and I am here also with Hands Across the Water. I'm also extremely upset, dismayed about what is happening with the red tide. So, consistent with, but independent of the University of Miami study, water quality data collected by Moat Marine under contract to Sarasota County and publicly available on the Sarasota County Water Atlas indicates an increasing trend in nitrogen, which is the fuel for red tide, in Sarasota Bay and Lemon Bay over the past 20 years. This increase is troubling in that it is occurring despite presumably beneficial public investments such as septic tank replacement programs, stormwater retrofits, advanced wastewater treatment and reuse, and fertilizer ordinances. In addition, research completed and well established at least a decade ago by the state of Florida also indicates that stormwater ponds are only capable of reducing nitrogen runoff between 40 and 45%. Therefore, it has been known by the state of Florida that the current regulations, which presume that the stormwater systems are reducing nutrients to waterways by 80%, are in fact outdated. Meanwhile, the list of waterways that are impaired for excess nutrients continues to grow. And if you've been watching the water pages at all, you will see that there has been approximately, I think there was 11 more dead dolphins, and I forgot how many manatees. And it's really time for us to think more about our environment and to work together to come to a solution. And because, as everybody in the environmental groups say, there is no planet B. And I am more than happy as a member of this group, as a resident of Northport, to do what I have to do to help you help us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Kelly, please state your name for the record.
Hi, my name is Brian Kelly. I'm a member of Hands Along the Water as well. So the state of Florida's water management agencies, led by Florida Department of Environmental Protection, have recognized for decades that the nutrient levels were increasing in our waterways and that the stormwater regulations were not meeting the presumed 80% reduction criteria. Ironically, this has been going on as long as the nitrogen levels have been increasing in our bays. In response, they engaged the state's university system and researchers, as well as stormwater experts and stakeholders, on a decade-long effort that culminated in 2010 with draft legislation and a 400-page advanced stormwater treatment design manual. In 2010, before the updated stormwater rule and manual could go through the scheduled statewide public hearing process and legislative adoption, it was canceled by the incoming administration and has been all but forgotten. The administration's unenlightened logic that environmental regulation kill jobs may have seemed reasonable justification at the time, since Florida and the country were still in the early years of the economic recovery from the Great Recession. However, here we are a decade later with outdated stormwater regulations that don't match the known science, and we're asking ourselves if the toxic algae blooms fueled by excess nutrients are the new normal. I've been a 38 year county resident, grew up fishing, diving, boating, being on the waterways my whole life. And to see what's going on now and to realize that I've been partaking in the water activities during these red tide events, but not knowing the actual pollution that's out there, kind of been disturbing. I noticed a sign coming in, City of Northport, for our children. So, you know, with all this that we're talking about, I just want you to keep in mind that we are leaving this planet for our children. And it's great to see a couple kids in here today partaking in this community involvement, speaking to you guys. And I just wanted to thank you for listening. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And can I also get Tim Ritchie, Edie Dreest, Maura Powell, and Alan Hale. Okay, Ms. Sandlin.
Hi, my name is Joan here in San Luis. I also am here today in support of this wonderful group. In the midst of all the economic and environmental devastation caused by the recent toxic algae bloom, Florida elected a new administration. So there is an opportunity to stop the finger pointing and hit the restart button. While acknowledging that both the past and science are important, we need to look forward. Our economy, environment, and quality of life are dependent on such. The Advanced Stormwater Treatment Rule public hearing process needs to be reinitiated so that the land-based nutrient runoff that fuels toxic algae blooms can be reduced to at least presumed levels. The hard work has been completed by the state of Florida, and the regulated community will rise to the occasion to do their part, as they always have, once the rules are workshopped and adopted. I thank you for your time, and I thank you in advance for what the wonderful things you're going to do about this issue.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Joan.
Good evening. Thank you for your time. My name's Tim Ritchie, and tonight what we're going to be talking about is an existing advanced stormwater treatment technology that can also produce revenue. The advanced stormwater treatment technologies are both well-established and continuing to evolve. An example of one such well-established technology already in limited use is stormwater harvesting and recycling. It is already being used by agricultural and some communities as a means of non-potable irrigation, in addition to recycling nutrients for use by landscapes. Stormwater harvesting and recycling has numerous benefits. It can be included within the footprint of existing or proposed stormwater ponds, and is an additive to the nutrient reduction capacity of stormwater ponds. So it could be implemented as a retrofit or a new system without giving up additional land. By meeting and reporting the surface water recycled, as may be required by the Water Management District, and periodically sampling nutrient concentrations in the stormwater ponds. The nutrient load reduction can be easily quantified in terms of annual ponds per nitrogen or phosphorus that does not discharge to the receiving stream, river, estuaries, and our bays. It can offset potable water and groundwater that may be otherwise used for irrigation, and it also may be the only stormwater best management practice that can actually create revenue to cover cost insofar as homeowners associations could charge a flat monthly fee for irrigation water. In fact, the potential revenue stream is one of the key considerations of why developers have already designed communities to harvest and recycle stormwater. I'm going to quickly go to red tide. I've been doing ever since July 24th over at DeSoto County. They had a BOCC meeting, and I found out about who Mosaic was. I was very naive. I know right now that I agree with red tide. We know blue-green algae comes from Lake Okeechobee. But what is coming down the Althea, the Manatee, the Little Manatee, the Myakka, and the Peace River is really bad stuff. And I've gone up there. Matter of fact, I'm going back on the 29th in an airplane over Hardy County. I'll bring pictures back for all of you. They have clay settling ponds. These are 40 feet high. They are in the 400-acre circumference. And they have green slime in it that stays there for our grandchildren's children's lifetime. But that's not the bad part. It's the 400-foot gypsum stack.
Thank you, Mr. Ritchie.
Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor?
City Manager, could I ask you a favor, please, to get his contact information? Because we have had a lot of discussion about Mosaic, and I wanted to kind of see if he'd be interested in meeting with me. So if somebody could grab his information, I'd be grateful.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Ms. Drees?
Thank you. Edie Drees from Northport. As you're probably aware, there are two different nitrogen nutrients, phosphorus and nitrogen, that feed two different harmful algae blooms, respectively being blue-green algae and red tide. The statewide stormwater treatment rule that was crafted under direction of the Department of Environmental Protection addresses means to alleviate some of the ways these nutrients find their ways into water bodies. Under this rule, by incorporating proactive nutrient reduction measures that would be required when development takes place, this would help reduce the taxpayer's expense that would ultimately be required to retrofit poorly designed infrastructure. You can see today where such retrofit efforts are taking place or have taken place in Sarasota County. For example, stormwater treatment retrofit investments have occurred in Celery Fields and Donna Bay, and maybe you happen to know if there's one in Northport. Septic tank replacement investments have occurred via the Philippi Creek Septic Tank Replacement Program, and also reduction of wastewater discharges to bays have occurred in the city of Sarasota, where they're building a pipeline to High Hat Ranch so wastewater doesn't go into the bay. As you've heard from the previous public comments, the state created the 400-page stormwater rule manual that's ready to be vetted by the public. It just needs to be reinitiated. This rule is important for all future development. It is believed by the folks who created this rule that if the guidelines are followed through with, nitrogen and phosphorus will be greatly reduced, which can help reduce the nutrients in our water bodies that fuel harmful algae blooms, thus helping heal our environment and local economies. And I think about hearing about these dolphins and the manatees and everything else that's dying. It's kind of like the canary in the coal mine. You know, what's the future of our health when all this is happening right outside our coastline? Proactive and preventative strategies are needed to curb the otherwise ever-increasing contribution of nutrient fuel to our waterways. Such proactive and preventative strategies are typically more cost-effective than retrofitting after the fact. The Advanced Stormwater Treatment Rule is an example of a proactive and preventative strategy that can both reduce nutrients to our waterways and reduce future public taxpayer expense. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Edie.
Go ahead, Ms. Powell. Please state your name for the record.
Hi, good evening. My name is Maura Powell. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My background is in behavioral health. I am a licensed clinical social worker. And I wanted to talk a little bit very quickly about shifts in social services and how I think that impacts Northport as a community and the city. The first thing that came to my attention, of course, is that the local DCF office, Department of Children and Families, is slated to close in spring of 2019. That office is located on 41 in the little mall area across from Lowe's. So that office is very important. It works in conjunction with the Department of Elder Affairs, which does child protective services. They do services to provide safety for vulnerable adults and the elderly. They do foster care there. They do process the applications for individuals who are newly eligible for Medicaid and Medicare. The Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, SNAP, formerly food stamps, is also run out of that office. So DCF serves not only the working poor, the working class, middle class, unemployed middle class, out of work middle class, the elderly, lots of folks go there to get services and resources. So I don't want to go down the hole about whether or not it was a political issue or a ballot issue, or we ran out of money or don't know what happened issue. But I do think it's important. Services are kind of fractured over there. Remember that also the local Department of Health, DOH, is also transitioning out and moving back to doing the things that they do best. So if you get a TB outbreak in the workplace or you do immunizations for children, DOH is going to do that. But they're moving away from primary care. So you have this entity, Center Place for Health, which is a federally qualified health center that has had a 10-year relationship with the Department of Health in Sarasota under Bill Little, now encompassing all of the services and resources that Department of Health provided. So DOH was doing medical, dental, behavioral health, primary care, labs, OBGYN. That's important because we do not have a OBGYN dedicated hospital here in Northport, and all of these things. There were a lot of terminations today over at the Department of Health. So I had a conversation with Linda Stone. She's a CEO at Center Place for Health. I also spoke to Trish Egan, who's the COO. And they were telling me that they are trying to get organized, but it's a little bit chaotic. So when you pick up the phone and you call Northport Health Center, under that umbrella you get Northport Department of Services, you get whoever's left at DOH, and then you got Center for Health. No one is giving out right information, right? People think that Center for Health is a managed care agency. It's a little different from that. They are a federally qualified health center, but the information is not organized. So people don't know where to go. They don't know what's going to happen to their clinic card. They don't know how much they're being charged. And the other thing that I would point out is that Center for Health also was unaware that the local DCF office is slated to close in spring of 2019. Remember that Center for Health is the one that does the 72-hour exams on children when they are removed from the home.
Thank you.
And they partner with Department of Health. So I think that all the players need to get in a room. Northport Police.
Thank you, Ms. Powell. Commissioner McDowell?
The
Ms.
Community
Powell,
Health
just 1
Action.
second, please. Commissioner McDowell?
City Manager, can maybe somebody get with our citizen that just spoke to find out what the city can do to help? Because this is going to impact our residents. This is going to impact our citizenry. I'd also like to find out if they're planning to close the DOH off Pan American, and what social services for DCF, if they do close that location, where will they have to go for services? We need to get on top of this while we can, and any information staff can get and report back to us, I would be grateful.
Thank you, Ms. Powell.
And a
Thank you.
follow-up to what we had a presentation
Correct.
in regards to this, so it's a follow-up to that.
Mr. Hale?
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Powell.
Thank you.
Alan Hale, Northport. She's a hard act to follow. That's definitely necessary. Yeah. I wasn't intending to speak, Commissioners, but it's just to follow up on what you were talking about, plastics. I'm with the Sierra Club and EcoSwift, and we've been following this and the basic problem with plastics. First of all, I agree with everything you say. It is true. The stuff does not break down. It just renders smaller and smaller. And if you eat fish now, your system does not break it down. It's like the forever quantity. So the product with plastic is this. You can gather it up and recycle it, and you can render it into pellets, but it must be reformed into other products. And so when there is an economic downturn, your major buyer, in this case it'd be China, they cut back on what they need of it. And so bales of the stuff just sit around in supply depots all over the country or on the docks waiting for another economic swing. So that was until we all know, I went and researched, and we all know that plastics comes from petroleum. And if we could somehow render that back into a flammable fuel, and it turns out this is a reality. And wouldn't you know it, the best plant that I saw is located in this country. You might want to take this down. The county of Montgomery County, Maryland, has a facility that's located in Durwood, Maryland, just outside of DC. And it's an amazing system. The unit is no bigger than the length of this room, and they buy plastics from the public, buy them, and then it is rendered by heat back into petroleum, and the airlines industry and the automotive industry are greatly interested in it because it is a flammable fuel. And because they're rendering the fuel, it also helps in running the facility itself. So it's not run by electricity or anything like that. So I encourage you to know that the answers are on the way. We do have working examples in this country of the way I feel that plastic should be treated as something that it can be rendered back into something valuable. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, no more public comments?
No, the next one is not for the, no more for this item.
Okay. All right, so we're going to move on to presentations. Commissioner Luke, I believe this was one that you brought.
Yes, thank you. I want to say thank you to those who spoke Hands Against the Water. I've been following them and what they've been doing and believe in the efforts that they put forward. I was invited to a small meeting with a couple of the members, and they introduced me to Steve, who I call the missing link. Steve Swa addresses us today as a regional and local watershed manager and stormwater expert to discuss a proactive approach for addressing the nutrients that fuel harmful algae blooms such as red tide. He is a professional engineer with 35 years of experience in Southwest Florida. While most of his professional career has been in the private sector, he did serve as stormwater director for Sarasota County between 2002 and 2006. In 2009 and 10, he served as the engineering representative for SwiftMud on the state's Technical Advisory Committee for the statewide stormwater treatment rule. This has been addressed by some of the speakers. It is in this content that I've asked him to come speak to this commission. So, Steve Swa.
Thank you, and I appreciate the opportunity to address the commission tonight. Is there a way to get this PowerPoint up?
There you go.
Okay, great. So first of all, I have to acknowledge the Hands Along the Water folks. They've grabbed my attention. I'm usually try to keep a low profile, but this toxic algae thing is just been so overwhelming in all the communities here that I feel compelled to speak to it. The stormwater rule that the state had drafted approximately a decade ago was followed by a decade of research before that and a recognition that nutrients are increasing. The number of natural water bodies in the state of Florida that are being designated as impaired for nutrients has been going up and continues to increase. From a stormwater manager's perspective, it's been difficult to relate to the general public why nutrient pollution is important until recently. Nutrients are usually invisible, but now they've manifested themselves in a red and green and blue color. So the public is acutely aware of what nutrient pollution is about. And it's made the job imperative to try to address that problem. So I don't know if this is the new normal, but I do know there are things that we can do and that we do know. So algae is naturally occurring life form, but it's usually not toxic. There's many forms of it. The harmful algae blooms are rare, but we have two of them that are occurring relatively simultaneously, the red tide and the blue-green algae. In general, we know that red tide thrives in salt or brackish water and is fueled by the nutrient nitrogen, while blue-green algae thrives in fresh water and is fueled by the nutrient phosphorus. While nutrients exist in nature, and even in the case of nitrogen in the atmosphere, man-made sources of these nutrients, typically associated with fertilizers and wastewater, can overwhelm our soils and waters. Stormwater runoff's role is to carry or wash these excess nutrients into our canals, rivers, estuaries, bays, and ultimately the Gulf of Mexico. While there's not a single solution or silver bullet, this presentation focuses on a preventive and proactive action, as people have discussed, that can be taken to help reduce the amount of nutrient fuel that is discharged from our stormwater treatment systems into these waterways. So here's the first kind of revelation. Where does nitrogen come from? We know we mine the phosphorus from the ground. We mine nitrogen fertilizer primarily from the atmosphere. At 80%, nitrogen is the most common element in the atmosphere. And although some plants can naturally fix or extract nitrogen from the atmosphere, it's very stable within the atmosphere. However, a little over 100 years ago, a German chemist named Fritz Haber, pictured in the lower left-hand corner, figured out a way to extract nitrogen from the atmosphere in anticipation of World War I. By 1950, this process was pretty well understood globally and kicked off what's called the Green Revolution, which was the ability to easily grow food through fertilizing plants to serve population growth. This graph shows in blue the dramatic increase in what's called reactive nitrogen that's been pulled from the atmosphere since 1950. It's been very successful in feeding an ever-growing population. In some ways, that's been a feedback loop in that the growing population has used more and more nutrients, fertilizer. But the other unintended consequence of the synthetic reactive nitrogen extraction is the over-reliance on chemical fertilization to increase yields and grow things at the expense of building and maintaining healthy soil. Healthy soil can naturally move and extract nitrogen and feed the plants with it. This is how organic farming works. They don't use chemical fertilizer. They build soil, and the crops are incidental to a certain degree. So the other thing is that a lot of crops can only uptake about 50% of this fertilizer. So the rest goes into the soils and water, and that excess nutrients and nitrogen goes into our waterways. Second thing, there was a colleague with the Southwest Florida Water Management District several months ago gave me a copy of the Brandt study from the University of Miami that was mentioned. So this was discussed briefly in the public comment section, but I just wanted to summarize its conclusions. Basically what they did was they were able to find good data sets to compare of red tide abundance concentrations, if you will, between the decade 1954 to 1963 and the decade 1994 to 2002. And what they found was in the latter decade, the red tide abundance had increased approximately 13 to 18-fold, and that the abundance of red tide along the shoreline had increased 20-fold between what's 12 to 20 miles out. They also noted that the red tide in the earlier decade occurred primarily in the fall months, but in the latter decade, it also occurred in winter and the spring months as well as the fall months. So the duration had increased as well as the abundance of it. And their conclusion was that although red tide is naturally occurring, increases in nutrient availability along the shoreline from human-related activity over the past half century are considered a major factor for the increase in red tide abundance. Coincidentally, and this was mentioned too, water quality sampling data collected by Mote Marine under contract to Sarasota County and published on the Sarasota County's Water Atlas, which is a great resource for anyone. They have all this data on there. I'd like to acknowledge John Ryan with Sarasota County Stormwater Department is here this evening as well. He kind of manages that data. But it's shown to everyone's surprise that nitrogen concentrations have been increasing gradually in Sarasota Bay for the past 20 years. I downloaded the data for Lemon Bay and found it almost the exact same trend over the past 20 years. So this data and this finding is independent of but consistent with the conclusions of the University of Miami study that says that there's a greater abundance of red tide along the shoreline. There's something happening along the shoreline, and the data is indicating that nutrient levels have increased along the shoreline and are continuing to increase. And this is despite significant public investments, as mentioned, in stormwater quality improvements, fertilizer restrictions, septic tanks programs, and improvements in wastewater treatment and recycling. These public investments they have to be reducing nutrients. But why is nitrogen increasing anyway? Okay, so since 1995, the state of Florida has recognized that nutrient levels, phosphorus and nitrogen, were increasing in the waterways throughout Florida. They consider that when it gets to a certain point that the waters become impaired, and that list of impaired waters throughout Florida has been growing for 20 years. They also, and this is from all the data that they've been collecting, they also looked at stormwater ponds, and what they found was, as mentioned earlier, is that stormwater ponds as a means of stormwater treatment are only efficient to about 40 to 45% removal of nitrogen. The target that's presumed has been 80%. Doesn't matter how big or deep the lake is, you reach a point of diminishing return at 40 to 45%, and that's all you can get. So the state embarked on a decade-long process that engaged the state university research resources. They convened a technical advisory committee that I was fortunate enough to serve on. We met every month in 2009 and in 2010 in Orlando at the University of Central Florida, that was the lead research agency. And they developed a stormwater treatment criteria manual and to better reduce nutrients. And that was the sole and only intent of that updated rule, was to address nitrogen and phosphorus, nothing else. That is the issue that they've recognized for quite a while. And so what happened? Well, they did develop a 400-page design manual, draft legislation, and a schedule for public hearings and adoption through 2010 and in 2011. But unfortunately, and probably largely due to the recovery of the economy, 2008, we had the Great Recession, the incoming administrator put the brakes on any new regulations. This was actually an update of the existing regulations based on better science, but for those reasons, this rule was never implemented. So now we have a new administration and the fresh experience of what happens if we don't manage nutrients and impaired waters that have increased over the last 8 to 9 years. So we have the opportunity to kind of hit the restart button and look at implementing this rule, be it a decade later. What are these advanced stormwater treatment BMPs that the state is looking at and include in the manual? Well, it still includes stormwater ponds because they do provide a benefit, but we need to do something on top of that. It was mentioned one of the key things that's already being utilized in a limited way for irrigation is actually recycling that stormwater, taking some of that stormwater and using it to irrigate landscapes and plants. That actually removes that nutrient load from discharging. It could be done again in the footprint of existing lakes or proposed lakes, so it doesn't really take up any more land. They also have all kinds of design criteria for what's called green infrastructure, pervious pavement, green roofs, et cetera, that is generally applicable in urban redevelopment type projects. There's a number of passive or organic nutrient reduction media such as, believe it or not, wood chips. If they're in an anaerobic condition with little oxygen, they can actually cause the nitrogen to turn back to gas and go in the atmosphere through a process called denitrification. Biochar, something called biochar we've been working with, and there's others. So there are technologies out there that are being looked at and that could be implemented to address these issues. I just wanted to quickly give an example of stormwater harvesting and recycling. This is being used primarily for irrigation. There are numerous examples in our district of agriculture doing this. Under the Water Management District's Farms program, they actually cost share for agriculture to recycle their water for irrigation to reduce groundwater withdrawals in the southern water use caution area. It's called, tailwater recovery in agriculture, but it's essentially stormwater recycling. Developers and existing communities, there's examples of them doing it as well, primarily for irrigation. This is an example of Venice Golf and Country Club in Venice.
Sir, I just want to remind you, we have about 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. That's been doing this, and we can actually calculate the amount of nutrients that are being recycled every year. So, in summary, this is the timeline of what we know. Red tide abundance and duration has been increasing over the last 50 to 60 years. Nitrogen concentrations in Sarasota Bay and Lemon Bay have been increasing over the last 20 years. State water bodies designated as impaired for nutrients have been increasing over the past 20 years. And the regulations have been drafted. They're ready to go to public hearing to start addressing the deficit in the ability of certain stormwater systems to use nutrients. And we have, in 2019 and beyond now, the opportunity to hit the restart button and resolve to ask the new administration to reinitiate the stormwater treatment public hearings and adoption process. And that's important that it goes through the public hearing process before adoption. That's where it was left off. So the preventative and proactive action requested is that in addition to public investments needed to retrofit for existing problems created by the past, and not to fall forward behind, that the state of Florida moved to reinitiate the statewide stormwater treatment rule to help address nitrogen, phosphorus nutrients which feed harmful algae blooms like red tide. A draft resolution has been prepared and can be provided to the city of North Fork for consideration to do just that at potentially a future meeting. And with that, I thank you greatly for your time and those that are here dressed in blue.
I'm passing out that draft resolution to everybody up here on the dais. I don't expect anybody to enact a resolution right now without looking into it and it being vetted through the attorney's office. But this is something I personally, and I know several of them out here, would like to see kicked off, and asking the state to pick this manual back up, complete it, vet it out, and start following some of these procedures. It's not going to correct all of it, but it's going to correct some of it because it's a huge effort. And so I will be putting on another agenda, hopefully the 6th, so that gives us some time to review it and see if we want to pass a resolution asking the state to pick this back up. That resolution will then be used as a footprint for other governmental entities. At Florida League of Cities, water quality was the #1 priority. They already know that this presentation and resolution and stuff were being looked at by our commission. They are interested in it, have already been asking for it, and there are several other organizations that would like to use that resolution as a footprint to press state. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to open up for some questions here. I just want to remind that we have a big agenda, so we want to move forward through it. I'm sure the gentleman will be always available for any phone calls or anything that we want. But go ahead, Commissioner or Vice Mayor McDowell. I think you're used to that.
I know. It's going to take time. So that was an amazing PowerPoint presentation, sir, and thank you for your time and your presentation. I do have one request. Is it possible to send a copy of the PowerPoint presentation to the city clerk's office so that it can be uploaded and put as part of our backup materials in case anybody from the public would like to see it?
Absolutely.
Would you please? And city clerk, if you could get with him to...
Already on the computer. I'm going to
Exactly. We already worked that prior to
okay,
so that it could
I was
be.
unaware of that, so,
no
okay.
problem.
I am on with the Charlotte Harbor National Estuary I'm the representative for this commission. And I think this is something that would be very interesting to them. I don't know if you could get me your contact information. I would be very grateful, so that way then I can share it with them to see if maybe you could do a presentation to them, because they have other government entities that are their representatives there too. So it might start that snowball to become an avalanche.
That's what
So
we're looking for.
if you could get me that contact information, I would be grateful.
Yeah, I serve on the Technical Advisory Committee for the Charlotte Harbor.
Oh, you do? Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
and Jennifer Hecker,
Right.
she actually served on the Technical Advisory Committee for this new stormwater rule back in the day.
So are
She's
you,
probably pretty familiar with it, but I will say the people that served on it may not remember why they were doing it. And it was
Okay.
all about nitrogen
so,
phosphorus.
so maybe we just need to replant the seed
Yeah,
instead of the weed and get that to grow.
sounds good.
That's why I'm calling the missing link, because we have research from Moat that's really good, but then you have these plans in the system at the water district level, and he's like, ding, 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 you know, we did this, we've looked at this, and this is why we did this, so I'm thankful for you.
And just throwing out another suggestion, even though I'm no longer the representative for the board for the Regional Planning Council, maybe that might be another avenue to start spreading the information to. Because I know our Regional Planning Council is South Florida, that was greatly impacted by this. I can get you that contact information to see if maybe they would be interested in chatting with you also.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you, Commissioner Luke, for putting this on.
Oh, this is big. Mr. Ryan, thank you very much. A lot of your stats are in here, Hands Across the Water and the Northport locales. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you all. Okay, we're going to move forward to our public hearings. We're going to start with ordinance number 2018-51. If I could have the city clerk read this ordinance by title only, please.
Yes, thank you. An ordinance of the City of Northport, Florida, amending the non-district budget fiscal year 2017-18 by providing for changes identified in Exhibit A, providing for severability, providing for conflicts, and providing an effective date. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor?
Yeah.
You might want to tell the folks that are leaving that we have the fracking and mining ordinance coming up. They might be interested
Yeah.
in staying for.
Yeah, you can stay. We do have that coming up, the fracking and mining ordinance. You can also watch on YouTube. You can and watch online. Thank you. Okay. I guess this would be city manager.
Thank you, Mayor. This is the second reading of the budget amendment. As I stated at the first reading, and it hasn't changed. This relates to last fiscal year's budget, some cleanup activity that is and since we're self-insured, will be needed every year. The self-insurance amount is to get an estimate of what our outstanding claims will be coming in for last fiscal year are, and the fleet management fund amount is for amount to true up what they've spent for other departments and to get the expenditure budgeted in fleet. So, like I said, this one's to just clean up from last fiscal year.
Okay. I see nobody with any questions. Do we want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion, Mayor. I'll make a motion to approve ordinance number 2018-51, amending fiscal year 17-18 non-district budget.
Second.
Got a motion by Commissioner McDowell, a second by Commissioner Luke, Vice Mayor McDowell, Commissioner Luke. Anything to those motions? Are we good to go? Let's take the vote. That was approved, 4-0. Moving on to the next ordinance number 2018-58. City Clerk, please read by title only.
Yes, thank you. Ordinance number 2018-58. An ordinance of the City of Northport, Florida, amending the non-district budget fiscal year 2018-19 by providing for changes identified in Exhibit A, providing for severability, providing for conflicts, and providing an effective date. Thank you.
Sir, before you leave, you left your jacket in here?
I'm sure he'll get outside and realize it, but.
Yeah, once it gets a little chilly. We are in the upper 60s. You might want that here in Florida. It gets cold. Thank you.
And I was just passing it down.
City Manager?
Thank you, Mayor. This one is also second reading. This is the current year budget.
Thank
This
you,
one
sir.
relates to spending of forfeiture money. It's allocating $8,590. This, as we had quite extensive conversation on the first reading, relates to the requirement to spend a certain amount according to state law for specified items related to nonprofits and that kind of thing for education purposes, and as they're identified in here, and also for the purchase of a vehicle, a replacement vehicle in the building fund for a vehicle that was totaled.
I do not see any speakers, so do we want to make a motion?
Make a motion, Mayor, to approve ordinance number 2018-58, amending fiscal year budget 2018-2019.
Second.
I have a motion by Vice Mayor, and I have a second by Commissioner Luke. Anything to the motion?
No, sir.
All right, let's vote. That passed 4-0. Moving on to ordinance number 2018-33. First reading, City Clerk, to read ordinance by title, please.
I need a motion first, please,
Oh.
on this one.
Move to read
Motion.
by, oh, you already pushed it, go ahead. Move to read by title only.
I'll second.
Okay, I've got a motion by Commissioner Luke, a second by Vice Mayor. Can we take the vote?
We need Commissioner Emmerich to vote, please.
Sorry.
And that passed 4-0. City Clerk?
Thank you. Ordinance number 2018-33, an ordinance of the City of Northport, Florida, amending the code of the City of Northport, Florida, Chapter 58, Planning and Development, Article 3, Impact Fees, allowing for deferral of payment of impact fees, modifying the timeline for and interest paid on refunds, and removing outdated language, providing for severability, providing for conflicts, providing a coding of amendments, and providing for an effective date. Thank you.
Yep. Does anybody have anything, any questions? I have Commissioner Luke.
I'll start off with questions, but there's also comments that I want to do too, so when we get to a comment section, let me know.
Well, ask your questions in the question section.
Yes, on line 99 or 100, I don't know if it's lined up too well. Should we not be striking that outdated date?
Questions.
Commissioner Luke, yes, someone had asked that prior to the meeting, and I agree that lines 99 through 102 include outdated language.
Okay, thank you. I saw another section addressed with that.
You
so
said
I was
line
curious if
99?
It was 99?
2102, or did you say 122?
102.
God, that's a lot.
And let's see. If I could get some clarification on how we determine the fee at the time of occupancy, the CO. If they come, I mean, I'm going to use the hotel that came before us as an example, and you tell them it's going to be X amount of dollars for that impact fee. The commission says yay, nay, whatever. But suppose it takes 2 years for that building construction to be done and they're to be paying their impact fee when they get the CO. The way it is right now, they're not locked into that fee, correct? I mean, they would have to, if the price went up during that time frame, they'd have to pay that higher price, correct?
You're asking if the impact fee calculation were to change from the time at which they applied for the deferral until the time at which the final payment on the deferral were due, would the total amount do different?
Final payment, because they're actually supposed to be paying for it, correct me if I'm wrong, when they get the CO.
Right.
They have like a 30-day time frame to submit their payment. But suppose I mean, are they guaranteed that the price they were told when they came in and got the permit is going to stay the same when they have the CO given to them? I don't think it's worded that way.
My understanding is no, for a few reasons. One is if our impact fee ordinance changes, depending on how the commission chooses to adopt a new ordinance. If you adopted a new ordinance with, like for instance, the last time we adopted a whole new ordinance was 2011. The fees changed from 2010 to 2011. If you adopt the ordinance stating that which is common, that people who have already applied and gotten an estimate, those are the rates that they'll pay, then that would give them that guarantee. It really depends on the ordinance that changes the fees and what the language is in that one. So right now, unless you change the current impact fee ordinance rates, then, well, they're not guaranteed it, but if you don't change the rates, they are still going to pay the amount under when they applied. So I don't believe they're guaranteed. I think the other part of your question was, when are they established?
Yes, I'm just curious if it would make a difference to, like the hotel, if the fees went up quite a bit.
It could. Oh, and I'm sorry, the other part of my answer was also, the other reason they're not guaranteed those rates is they may start and come in to pull a permit, and if something changes on the type of facility they apply for, their impact fees would be adjusted. And it has happened that it's been adjusted both up or down based on what actually ends up being constructed.
All right, do you see a challenge with it potentially going up when somebody is going to utilize this deferral to do something that is for public good?
I think the deferral would be, again, their impact fees then are locked in once they get the CO. The deferral is just telling them how long they have to pay that money. Under the current ordinance, they have to pay it at CO. The fees, my anticipation is the fees would not change then once they got a CO just because they deferred payment for however long a period of time. If we were to try to change it during the deferral period, yeah, I would imagine that they would challenge us and we'd probably lose, would be my guess. We've then at that point told them what the amount is, they've agreed to pay it, we're just in payment terms.
Okay. I would still hope that during the 2 years of construction, like if the hotel took 2 years, that the fee wouldn't go up so drastically that it would take away from, their desire to put something in, especially along the lines of affordable housing.
And that's something I would definitely recommend that you all consider if and when we change the impact fee ordinance. You may want to take that into account. We've budgeted to have that looked at this year, so that might be something, if that's what the body as a whole wants us to include, and when we look at that, is that people get grandfathered in under what they applied under. We have done that in the past, so that would take that's the direction that you all want.
My concern then. The other things that I have will be more statements with questions, so I'll cease right now and then pick up later. Thank you.
Vice Mayor.
You asked some of my questions, so thank you for that. This deferment is only going to apply to Northport impact fees, correct?
Correct. We don't control if Sarasota County were to allow that, and right now my understanding is they do not. So correct, this would only apply to the ones that are ours.
Thank you. We would still then collect what was necessary for Sarasota County's impact fees and pass that on, correct?
Under current rules, yes. If Sarasota County were to authorize some kind of deferment, we would follow whatever the interlocal states us to do. If you go to line 115, and I think I already asked City Attorney this question on line 116, I apologize. It says that the impact fee liability shall be executed by the county, period. The city shall serve this notice. Is it still agreed that county was a?
It's just a typo. It should
read
city.
City, yes, correct? So we have to make sure that when we do the motion, that is changed. Thank you for that. On line 122, it says that the city shall record the notice of payment in its official records with the county releasing the lien. But it doesn't say anything about the fees associated with releasing the lien. Are there fees to release the lien? And if there is, shouldn't we have language in there that says the property owner is going to pay that also?
So there are filing fees for any document you file within the county land records. That would range from about $10 to $20 for a release of lien. Earlier in the line, I believe it's 120, it refers to the property owner being required to pay the impact fees, all interest, penalties, costs, and fees for collection, and along with a service charge before the lien being released. But certainly if you wanted to include a specific statement to recording fees, you could do that.
Yeah, because
there'll also be a recording fee to file the lien as well, at $10 for the first page and $8.50 for each subsequent page.
So maybe to clarify the language, that it's not only when you're filing the lien, but when you're also releasing it. Because right now, I'm only seeing it to file. And I don't want the city to pay for releasing it. That should be something, in my opinion, the property owner pays. Is that language you need to have added for the motion, or is that language that we can just have you add between first and second reading?
I can add it.
Now or second reading? I'm trying to think of it for motion purposes.
We don't need to draft the specific language now.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. So in the past, I have seen that liens get filed for a variety of things, only to have those liens then not paid because we're like low man on the totem pole. Will that be the case for deferred impact fees?
If you'd like me to research the priority of a lien and how that would fall in a foreclosure action, I can do that for you. I don't have that answer for you on hand today.
What is that called? To
priority
research
of
it?
the lien.
Priority of lien, thank you. Yeah, I definitely would, because I think that's very important. But I'll leave that for comments. Let me check one more thing. Recently, we approved the PACE program. And that PACE program was where the costs were put on the non-ad valorem assessments. Is it possible to do deferred impact fees similar to the PACE program and put it on non-ad valorem taxes? That way then we definitely get our money.
I don't think I understand your question, Vice Mayor.
We approved the PACE program. I don't remember if you were here or if Assistant City Attorney filled in. So the PACE program was if a homeowner wanted to upgrade their home, the monies were paid up front, but then their home had a lien on it, but they were paid back through non-ad valorem taxes.
You know, it's been a while. I was here, we discussed the PACE program, but it's been a while since I've looked into the documentation. I believe that is specifically authorized by a Florida state statute. I'd have to go back and look at that, but I've never heard of anything like that with respect to impact fees. And in drafting this ordinance and looking across the state at other programs and other cities and counties that offer deferrals, I never saw anything like that. There's certainly nothing that I've found in the statutes that relates to a scheme like that for impact fees.
So if there's nothing preventing us, does that mean that we are permitted
You know,
Or
I
is that
can't-
something you would have to
I
research?
can't answer the question of how this relates to the PACE program without some type of legal research into that.
Okay. That's all I have the questions on. I definitely have comments, though.
Rich, you have anything? No, sir. Okay. I'm ready for a motion.
Oh, sorry. I'm trying to think of how to word it, Mayor, so bear with me a moment.
I've got 3 specific things that you
Yeah, well,
mentioned.
that's not any of them I want to do.
Still have, I have
Well, notes for
issues,
nothing.
but I have issues with it the way it is. That's
Right.
why I was going to
fine.
discuss too.
Yeah. So let's make the motion, and then we can discuss it.
I'll make a motion to have the city attorney make the changes recommended at lines 116 and 99 to 102. And adding language at 122 for the language for release of lien prior to second reading. Prior to second reading, have city attorney do research on the priority of lien payment in respects to deferred impact fees. And also research the ability to have deferred impact fees be paid through non-ad valorem tax assessments, as opposed to what is here.
You have a second?
I'll
And
second
Vice
for
Mayor,
discussion.
is part of your motion to continue this item to
Not
second
yet.
reading?
And to continue this to a time uncertain pending research. Does that make sense? Okay.
Okay, I seconded for discussion.
Vice Mayor?
So the whole idea of deferring impact fees when we first had this discussion was fabulous. Seeing how it gets implemented gives me great pause based on liens and lien history with the city of getting repaid. And that is a huge concern because impact fees is different than a lien for not for cutting grass for somebody or fixing stormwater. It's different. This is impact fees that has a huge impact on the city if we don't get the money back. Commercial property is more than likely going to be the ones that take advantage of deferred impact fees. Commercial property doesn't sell very often. Usually it's held a little bit tighter and not resold the land. They may release it and stuff, but not selling the land. And I'm afraid that we will never get our impact fees. And I really am grateful for the research, and maybe we can put our thinking caps on to ensure that we are getting paid as opposed to being the last on the list.
Commissioner Luke?
For now, I'm done. Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah, I want to ask a question in regards to lines 69, 70, and 71. Is there a reason why it doesn't talk about waiving in those 3 lines? I mean, it talks about a final calculation of fees shall occur unless deferred by the city commission. But should it also be naming waiving because that was something that was, or is it not supposed to be there?
Well, as you know, the waiver of impact fees is addressed throughout this ordinance in the
Right.
current language.
Exactly.
The reason I made this change here is because without it, it read that a final calculation of the fee shall occur and be collected upon the issuance of a CO. And if you're waiving the impact fee and it's 0, then you're not collecting it as CO. If you're deferring it, you're not collecting it at CO either, you're going to be collecting it at a different time.
I wanted
Or potentially, you might be
clarification of-
collecting a portion of it at CO, or you might be collecting a portion of it at a different
Okay.
time and different
Okay,
payments.
thank you for that. The concerns that I have with the ordinance itself is line 92 states that so long as the changes to the impact generating development serves a valid public purpose. Now, I like that. In my thinking, those people who come to ask for a deferment are those who are building something that the city pretty much needs. It's a commercial, like the hotel, could be affordable housing, apartments, various things such as that. Those are the ones that I see coming to ask for it. But I wonder, even the one whereas talks about, I think it's the third whereas, talks about public purposes. But I'm a little concerned, could a residential come and say, oh, well, you're playing favorites here because, you're helping these guys, but you're not helping me. And so I'm concerned about it not having some kind of restrictions or things. When I sent the email in the question, city attorney did send back to potentially define the type of development that qualifies for this ordinance, define the value of the development. These are things that she found in other cities' ordinances, such as maybe you want to say it has to be worth $1 million. Establish a maximum of the amount of the impact fees to be deferred. You may want to set $100,000 is, the only amount that we're going to defer. Or set forth a maximum term for the referrals, how long they're going to be. Is it going to be 3-year deferral, 4-year deferral? And this ordinance doesn't address any of those types of issues. So to me, those need to be brought into this ordinance to secure us legally so that we're not having, arbitrary suits brought against us for partiality. My concern.
Mayor, may I speak to that?
Yes.
And it's a good question that you raised, Commissioner Luke. At the original direction of the commission in June, when this was discussed informally, so now's the chance to look at it a little deeper, the specific direction was everything comes to the commission on a case-by-case basis. We don't want, any restrictions or parameters. So if the commission leaves it that way, then the way those parameters become established is just by commission action. So whatever happens the first time an application comes forward, it begins to establish a parameter. What happens the second, third, fourth time, before this commission or a commission 4 or 5 or 6 or 10 years from now, if the ordinance, stays in place with the same language, that also the type of precedent. And then we kind of have to go back and try to make sure that we're treating everyone the same, Oh, you gave me a deferral, but mine was for 4 years. Well, in 2018, you gave someone in a similar situation 3 years, or vice versa. So I did, in looking at other impact fees, both for counties and cities, I didn't find any that had no parameters. Every entities that I found had those parameters, and they are something that I would recommend from a legal standpoint, so that it puts the city at less risk. Now, what you want to do with that, if you decide to adopt those parameters, is really fair ground, because what constitutes a valid public purpose is something that is determined by the commission as a legislative body. So whether that's commercial development overall or commercial development over the value of $1 million, which was in one county's code, whether it's low, sort of affordable housing, which you see a lot of impact fee deferrals related to affordable housing, both, or something in between, or something totally different. That's up to you, but that is some food for thought.
Commissioner Luke, I fully agree with that, because I think us having to always look back every time somebody comes up here and figure out what in the world have we done. Because that's in essence what we'd have to do every single time. So I fully agree. I think we need to have some form of parameters in there.
You want to make the
You want
motion?
to
or
make an
want me
amendment to the motion?
To amend the motion, or do you want me to?
Yeah, but are we going to have discussion as to what type, or do you want me to state what types I
Well-
want to see, and you guys tell me whether you agree?
Well, honestly, I think, I don't want to be the one writing it. That's what we have the legal team for, right? And so I would like them maybe to bring us back.
Yes.
Because we have another reading, right? So we bring back for the next
Okay,
reading.
I'll go ahead and make an amendment
Can I ask
asking,
a question before you do that?
Sure.
Because it might be pertinent to yours. City Attorney, I'm sorry, Mayor, can I ask City Attorney a question?
No, go ahead.
Mother, may I, or Father, may I?
If we change this first reading, since we're already going to be delaying second reading until we get the research done, if that's the will of the commission, of course, do we have to re-advertise first reading and redo first reading?
No, the notice portion, the block at the top is fairly broad, as long as
Okay.
it relates to deferral of impact fees.
Just making
We're
sure.
covered.
Thank you.
Commissioner Luke?
Okay, I'll make an amendment to the motion requesting city attorney and staff to incorporate within the ordinance some parameters, which can include the type of development that qualifies for it, defining the value of the development, establishing a maximum amount of the impact fees to be deferred, or also setting a maximum term limit of the deferral.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Oops.
I have a motion by Commissioner Luke to amend the motion. Sorry, I have an amendment to the motion by Commissioner Luke, and I have a second by Vice Mayor. Commissioner Luke, do you have anything to do?
No, I appreciate it. I feel much, much better knowing that there's parameters to it. You don't just throw the gate open and let it go.
Vice Mayor?
Yeah, I appreciate your clarity because I have a question that I wanted to ask, but it just was so ambiguous, I couldn't put it in
The
words.
words.
So I appreciate that because it tied into exactly what that question was. What is that process? So thank you for that.
Does everybody understand the amendment?
Absolutely.
Okay, can we take the vote? The amendment to the motion passed 4-0. Now to the motion. Does everybody understand the original motion? Or do we need that read back to us? Commissioner, you good?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, let's take the vote. And that passes 4-0. Thank you. We're going to move on to the next ordinance. Ordinance 2018-43 has to do with the prohibition on well stimulation, fracking for oil and natural gas exploration. I need a motion to read ordinance by title only.
I'll make a motion, Mayor, to read this by title only.
Second.
I have a motion by the Vice Mayor, seconded by Commissioner Luke. Anything to that? And that passes 4-0. City Manager, excuse me.
Thank you, Mayor. Does this need to be read by title only first?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. City Clerk.
Thank you. Ordinance 2018-43. An ordinance of the City of Northport, Florida, amending the Unified Land Development Code of the City of Northport, Florida, prohibiting well stimulation fracking for oil and natural gas extraction by amending Chapter 14, Earth Moving, Dredging, and Fill Regulations, Article 1, General, and by creating Article 5, Definitions, providing for adoption, providing for conflicts, providing for severability, providing for coding, and providing an effective date. Thank you.
Fantastic. City Manager.
Thank you again, Mayor. This is an ordinance that you guys requested regarding fracking. It's been brought forward to the Planning and Zoning Advisory Board. I have staff here if you'd like to know more about it. I think that you probably all have a bunch of questions on this. If not, we can give you a short presentation, but I'll leave that up to you in the need for expediency if you want to just go ahead into questions or if you'd like to see a presentation.
Well, I'll defer to the board. I mean, would you guys like to see one? I mean, I know that this was brought by the board, so we kind of have a
I
reason
think for public consumption, maybe it would be wise to do a presentation, brief as it may be.
Quick presentation would be fantastic, City
Let me
Manager.
just give you a quick overview real quick. Mr. Miles, our
And it's
Neighborhood
no,
Development
no
Services Director.
fracking. brief enough.
There you go.
For the record, Frank Miles, Neighborhood Services Development Director. This ordinance is brought before you for first reading. The City Commission has previously adopted legislation supporting state efforts to ban the use of hydraulic fracturing or fracking. And we were directed, staff was directed to develop local legislation to address the issue, to ban that practice within the city of Northport. The proposed amendment that's before you adds language to the ULDC that will prohibit any oil or natural gas exploration that uses this type of technology within the city of Northport. Staff has reviewed this petition and found it consistent with the comprehensive plan. The city attorney has reviewed and approved the ordinance, and it also went before the Planning and Zoning Advisory Board, and they unanimously recommended approval as well.
Okay, Commissioner McDowell.
Thank you for the presentation. City Attorney, on line 96 and 97 and 98, it says no person or entity may engage in oil or natural gas exploration, blah, 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 that originates outside the corporate limits of the city of Northport. How can we as a city regulate something that happens in a different city, different county? I'm envisioning like something happening in Hardy County that would affect us because it rolls down towards us.
I think what this is referring to, if you look at number one, just to give it a little bit of context, it says you can't do anything like this within the corporate limits of the city. And number two is you can't do anything like this that starts somewhere else but enters into or under the ground of the corporate limits. So, and I'm sure Ms. Galehouse could expand on that, a lot of fracking is done on a slant so that it might begin on property A, but then it comes underground on property B, which would still be within the corporate limits.
Oh, so it's
the
like
fracking,
right.
So the fracking might occur within the city limits.
Rights aspect of that.
Correct.
So it may not be as far away as like Hardy County. It's just basically on the city limit line.
I'm not sure, I don't know how long those slant drills are, but.
Well, I think the point is, once it hits the line, we own the mineral
Exactly.
rights to
Gotta
that, and you gotta
stop.
stop it there.
Yep.
Property owner owns them, right?
Yeah.
Mineral rights are property rights, just like
Right.
surface rights are.
So at the city line is where it stops, and we're not regulating what's happening outside of our city limits. It's at the city line is where it stops.
Correct.
Jurisdiction.
It doesn't quite, I don't quite read it that way, so
I
I'm glad
did.
you clarified that. Thank you.
Anybody else?
I'm ready to make a motion. Move to approve ordinance, move to continue ordinance 2018-43 to the second reading of, December 11th, 2018.
I'll second, but I think I'm going to have to make an amendment.
Second, anything to that, Commissioner Luke?
No.
Commissioner McDowell?
Since the motion was to continue ordinance number 2018-43, what about the text? Do we have to continue that too?
Let's do the text. What do you
It
mean?
says petition TXT 18171. Is that,
I believe that's an internal file number that the Neighborhood Development
thank you.
Services
Okay,
uses.
I didn't know if that was a text amendment that also had to be attached to that, so thank you.
So let's take the vote. That passes 4-0.
Thank you.
Nobody dissenting. Okay, we're moving on. We're going to move on to ordinance number 2018-40, prohibition of phosphate mining. I need a motion to read by title only.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Vice Mayor, seconded by Commissioner Luke. City Clerk.
Vote on that, please.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Geez, you guys are really nitpicky.
Sorry.
Okay, City Clerk? Oh, wait, that was approved 4-0. Go ahead.
Thank you. Ordinance number 2018-40. An ordinance of the City of Northport, Florida, amending the Unified Land Development Code of the City of Northport, Florida, relating to phosphate mining by amending Chapter 14, Earth Moving, Dredging and Fill Regulations, Article 1, General, Section 14-9, Prohibited Activities, and by amending Article 5, Definition, providing for adoption, providing for conflicts, providing for severability, providing for coding, and providing an effective date. Thank you.
Thank you, City Manager, and maybe we can get a 30,000-foot overview too, just like we did the last one.
Thank you, Mayor. That's exactly what we'll do. So I'll turn it back over to Mr. Miles again so he can give you that overview.
All right, thank you.
Yes, Mayor and Commission. This item that is brought before you for first reading is a result of a couple of presentations that were given to the Commission regarding the impact of phosphate mining within the region. The ordinance that is presented here before you will add phosphate mining to a list of prohibited uses within our ULDC. As you have heard previously, there are potential impacts on the city's water supply, potential matters relating to quality, and the impact of phosphate mining on that system. This ordinance has been reviewed and has been found to be consistent with the city's comprehensive plan. The city attorney has also reviewed and approved the ordinance. It also was heard before the Planning and Zoning Advisory Board, and they also recommended approval.
Okay.
They had a 4-2 vote, correct? Thank you.
Commissioner McDowell.
Yeah, in the staff report, under background, and I'm not sure who to direct this to, if it's city attorney or staff. Under the last paragraph, under the subsection called background, it says that there's 72 properties in the city that has mineral rights. Could you help me understand what that means? And does those mineral rights then go away because we just possibly approved the fracking?
So the mineral rights, as the city attorney mentioned in the last presentation, they basically have separated those. Normally when you buy a piece of property, you own everything. The minerals above it, the air, or below it, the air above it, you own the whole thing. So on these particular properties, those mineral rights below it have been separated out and sold to a separate person. So the property owner owns their home, but someone else owns everything underneath it, basically. So there's potential, of course, with any of these ordinances for implications with those property rights. Sorry, I lost the rest of your question.
Can I?
So because we just approved first reading of that fracking ordinance, how does that play into with these mineral rights? Because we're just basically said, okay, you have mineral rights, you can't drill anyways. So how does that play in?
So in the fracking ordinance, what if it's ultimately approved, what it says is you can't drill into your mineral, you can't utilize your mineral rights and drill into them utilizing a certain method.
Right.
That's not the only method or mechanism by which to extract the different types of minerals and gases and things that could possibly be subsurface.
Fracking.
It's just one method.
Can I piggyback on that and ask these, was it 72?
Mm-hmm.
Are they in a group? Or are they?
No, they're scattered throughout.
They're scattered throughout. And are they just regular single lots, the 80 by 120?
Most of them, I'd have to go back and look at what all of them were. It's been a while since I've looked at that data, but I believe most of them were regular lots.
Okay, so even if you lumped them together, you don't have very much property.
Well, and can I just jump in and say that's at the current time. I may have mentioned a time or 1,000 that I'm from Texas. So where I grew up was on the East Texas oil field. And there, almost no one owns the surface rights and the mineral rights because you don't sell the mineral rights, you pass them down. And you'll have people who don't own anything. but they have mineral rights, just in case somebody drills for oil. So, anyone can sell their mineral rights at any time. They don't have to do it in conjunction with selling the surface rights.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So these other methods that you guys are talking about besides the fracking methods, are those methods usable and attainable for drilling on these smaller parcels? I don't know what those other methods are, and I don't know if they should probably be included with that fracking thing. I don't know.
I'd have to do more research into what other methods there are, and all the potential uses of those mineral rights. I don't know that information today. I'd have to do more research into that.
And I might add, in one of the presentations that was made by the consultants that the city obtained was, I believe, in order for a phosphate mine facility to be profitable or workable, it involves thousands of acres of land in order for that to be utilized.
Crazy amount.
Single tracks would probably not be economically feasible for a phosphate mine.
Thank you.
Have no other questions? Can I get a motion?
Make a motion? Do you have another question? I'm sorry.
No, I'll just make a statement.
Okay. I make a motion to approve and continue ordinance number 2018-40 to second reading on December 11th.
Second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Vice Mayor, seconded by Commissioner Emmerich. Anything to the motion, Vice Mayor?
No, thank you for bringing this forward. I know that there may be some legal problems down the road, but at least we have it on the books now. So thank you.
Commissioner Emmerich? Good? Okay, let's. Yep, I'm sorry, go ahead, Commissioner Lee.
The only reason that I really can go ahead and vote for this is because of what the city attorney wrote in the first line on her second page. Because banning it outright instead of putting restrictions on it, you do potentially have a legal battle. And having the business background, I protect the company that I work for from all legal ramifications. So it's something that I really looked at heavily because I want to protect the city. Do I think putting stiff regulations on it is the best way to handle this? Yes, I do. But with that being said, that first line in the second page of her writing where the state doesn't preempt us entirely from doing this, it allows me to breathe, take a breath. So I appreciate the research, city attorney, and because of that research, I can vote for the ordinance the way that it's drafted in this form instead of it just restricting.
Take a vote. And that passes 4-0. We'll move to the Preserve Phase 2, replat of Phase 1, tracks 700, 701, 702. This is a quasi-judicial matter. City Clerk, will you swear in those wishing to provide testimony?
Yes. Can I have anybody wishing to provide testimony please stand and raise your right hand? You swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is true and accurate to the best of your knowledge, so help you God. Thank you.
Disclose any ex parte communications. Commissioner Liu?
I had an agenda briefing with the 2 assistant city managers, and we did not go, well, also the assistant city attorney. They just answered the brief questions to me, and I did read the emails where there was questions from other commissioners also.
And Mayor, if I might just interject, because we do have a new member on the board, just to explain what ex parte disclosures are in a quasi-judicial proceeding. That's where the board members are required to disclose the subject of communications or investigations or site visits, or really anything that you have learned about the item coming before you for hearing today, which is this particular plat for the Preserve Phase 2. Anything that you have learned before you came in today should be disclosed on the record now, and that can include if you visited with staff members about the item. And so that's what you'll hear the commissioners doing at this time. So any disclosure should include the identification of who you spoke with, if it was a communication, or who sent you an email, and that should be put into the record if you have something in writing, as well as the content of the communication or the observation.
That's what I was going to also ask, because you mentioned that you had a couple of questions. Does she need to voice those questions?
She can ask the questions during the hearing.
Oh, okay.
So it was just
Oh,
on
okay.
that topic.
Okay, I didn't know if that included with the ex parte, because you did just say that you had to kind of give forth that information, so I didn't know.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I don't recall exactly what the Commissioner Lake said, but any content that she learned about the facts or the issues that are coming before us should be disclosed as part of the
Was there anything
disclosure.
you learned about the facts during that time?
We just discussed the topic.
Okay.
Okay,
There you
size, which piece of property it was. I'm very familiar with the preserve. It's beautiful development and those type of simple type questions for me to identify what we were looking at. Then the other questions in the emails dealt with how many lots are now removed, how many lots are left. Also, if you can or can't, refuse platting something, such as we're doing, so.
Yeah, I only asked that because you specifically said there were a couple of questions that were answered, so that's why I was asking that. Commissioner or Vice Mayor McDowell.
So I had an agenda briefing with both of the assistant city managers and the assistant city attorney. I am the maker of that email. I think with the questions, staff answered the questions via email. I did have a couple questions during the agenda briefing, but they were answered basically through the email. And if necessary, city attorney, I can forward that to clerk, but it is already public record.
Yeah, it should go into the record for the proceeding. I'm sorry. It should go into the record for the proceeding.
I will find it and send it to her. It might be a few days.
Commissioner Emmerich.
I had an agenda briefing with both the assistant city managers and the assistant attorney, or whatever the title is, I'm sorry. I have no input from this in that briefing, so basically I'm unknowledgeable.
Don't word it that way.
I have a clean slate, so I'm open ears.
I did have, again, an agenda briefing with both the assistant city attorney, both assistant city managers, and we just briefed over the title. We didn't even discuss it, and so that's what I have. Okay, so city manager.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to ask staff to come up, actually.
So
This falls under our quasi-judicial procedure, this beautiful flow chart. I know you all see it in your dreams. With the applicant, we're on the third arrow down, the blue one.
So that's what I do.
Yes, sir.
That's my first day as mayor up here. All right, so presentations. The applicant, please. Do you have a presentation? And you have, how long is that? 20 minutes. Oh, no, you got to use every minute.
What we're presenting before you today is Preserve Phase 2.
Can you please state your name for the record?
I apologize. Bobby Claybrook, AM Engineering. Phase 2 of the proposed project consists of a 10.79 acre site that will create 90 single-family residential lots with private roads and stormwater management areas that will be operated and maintained by the West Villages Improvement District. Phase 2 will be a replat of Phase 1 tracks 700, 701, and 702. The on-site potable water and sanitary sewer will be turned over to the City of Northport for ownership, operation, and maintenance. The project will have one access to West Villages Parkway and an emergency road access to River Road. The property has one existing wetland and there are no proposed wetland impacts. All of the proposed improvements will be funded by the West Villages Improvement District through debt issuance. Phase 1 has been constructed with 110 lots. Phase 2 will be 90 lots, and with the combined 200 lots for phases 1 and 2.
Thank you. City staff?
Good evening. For the record, Nicole Galehouse, Interim Planning Manager, and I have been sworn. So as the applicant stated, this is a replat of 3 tracts that were platted with Phase 1. It is 90 lots. Phase 1 was 110, and Phase 3, which is going to be coming shortly, is 23 lots for a total of 223. This area is neighborhood 8 in the Village A Village District Pattern Plan and has been allocated 230 units per that documentation, so they are coming in about 7 under. This has been reviewed by our city surveyor and approved by him, and that is all staff has on this one, unless you have any questions.
Okay, we don't have anybody that's aggrieved, right? Nobody's, okay. So. Oh, do you have a rebuttal? Okay. Oh, I need to state that on the record?
Yes, sir.
Would you please state that on the record if you have a rebuttal? I'm so sorry.
No problem. Bobby Claybrook, AM Engineering, we do not have a rebuttal.
Thank you. Okay. City staff, do you have a rebuttal of the non-rebuttal? Okay. Let's just get to the question. Debbie's pointing stuff out to me. Commissioner McDowell. No, I appreciate it. Commissioner McDowell.
Okay. So, thank you very much for this larger map, but I still can't see it.
Vice Mayor, I'm so sorry to interrupt. The next item in the quasi-judicial process is to provide for public comment.
Oh.
And if there is no public comment, we do need to state that on the
I just need
record.
to state that.
Yes, sir, just so that we make a record to show
Okay.
that we've given the proper due process to the applicant.
Do we have any public comment?
we do not.
No public comment? Okay, Commissioner McDowell?
Oh, goodness sakes. Hang on one second.
Good, very repetitive.
I think we missed a public comment for 5D. Okay, we'll have to hear him after this item. Sorry. So sorry. So in the legislative text, it says Phase 2 is a replat of Phase 1, Track 700, 701, and 702. Where is 700, 701, and 702 on this map?
I'm pulling it up.
Thank you. Because I see track 500, I see track 300, I see track 703. I don't see 700, 701, and 702.
Okay, I have it pulled up on the screen here. So where my cursor is, you have 700, which is this interior piece here.
Hold on,
Seven.
hold on.
Right here.
Okay, that's not what I have here, ma'am.
This is from the Phase 1 plat.
That's why I don't see it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
this
700
is
is here, 701 is around the outside, and then 702 is here. So if you go back to, you can see this same shape here in the Phase 2 plat.
So the first map that shows 701, 702, and 703, or whatever those numbers are, that was when we approved it back in a year or so ago.
Yeah.
Okay. That answered that question. Thank you very much. Speaking of that question, in the legislative text, it says that it was approved in February of 2017. That actually is incorrect, and I think that the legislative text is a legal kind of thing. Can it be changed to read March 7th of 17?
Yes, we can make that amendment, I think. I'm not sure.
Because I checked all over in February and didn't see this on any of the agendas. I did see it on the agenda in March.
Vice Mayor, are you asking staff to modify their attached report?
And I don't know if it's actually in the staff report, but I do know it's on the legislative text. and it says that it was approved by commission in February of 17.
Then my suggestion would be, because it's a quasi-judicial matter, we want to make sure that the record stays intact, would be that be clarified as part of the testimony in today's
Right.
hearing.
And if it's elsewhere besides legislative text, that it get changed in any staff reports or any other documentation.
Coming forward in the future, the evidence that's before the board for the quasi-judicial hearing is the evidence that's before the board. It cannot be modified at a later date.
Gotcha.
But it can be modified via testimony. If Ms. Galehouse is testifying that there was a Scrivener's error or a typo in the staff report and it should have been a different date, then you can consider that as evidence before you. But the evidence and documentation for this hearing cannot be modified after the hearing.
Gotcha.
And I can clarify that because I do have the recorded plat for phase 1 and it does have a date of March 7th on the front of it.
Okay. Thank you for making that clarification. So this trustee map, can you use your cursor and show me where the second emergency access is, please?
So if you look right here where it says SHT4, I'll show you where it is first. So this is Lovegrass Street and this is River Road here.
Mhm.
It connects from Lovegrass to River Road. So if I go to sheet 4, you can see, if I zoom in here a little bit, this is Lovegrass Street, and so you can see this 20-foot easement that goes along here.
Mhm.
That's that emergency access.
Oh, it's amazing what larger print can do for these old eyes. Thank you. Do you know if that is already constructed or is it under construction?
I believe it is constructed. I have an aerial here that shows that it appears to be constructed.
Okay, is that dirt or is that asphalt?
I'll let the applicant speak to.
Thank you, because I can't quite tell. It looks like the same color.
Terrasol West Villages development, I have been sworn. That access is constructed and it is crushed concrete, so it will sustain any emergency vehicle loads as required by the fire department.
Does it have a closed, inaccessible gate, or is it like wide open?
Currently, it's being used as construction access in addition to being emergency access. Once that construction access is closed, it will have a chain link fence that has the fire department lock on it, so it will only be accessible to emergency vehicles.
So no wall is going to be erected once this project is complete, blocking
Not
that?
a- no, not a
Thank you. Wildlife survey, last question. Usually they have to be done every year. I'm wondering, is another wildlife survey going to be completed since the last one was over a year ago?
In regards to the wildlife survey, we did have a gopher tortoise permit done for phase 3. However, this portion that's being replatted was already cleared in what we call in the business tabletop. So it was already mass graded. So there was not any wildlife to impact because it had already been cleared with the last land clearing permit previously done. The only thing that we have come in to do for this particularly is to pave already dirt areas and put in all of the utility services for this particular platted area. So there's not an additional impact to wildlife for this portion of the property that was already accommodated in the last permitting process.
Thank you, Mayor.
Good. I see no other questions. Do we have any closing arguments by our presenters?
No closing arguments from staff.
Nope.
Give an affirmative response on the record so we hear it on the recording, please.
I do not just thank you for the ability to present this.
Thank you. And the staff said?
No closing
No.
arguments from staff.
Okay, so I guess I will close the public hearing now, and we shall get into entertaining any motions.
I'll make a motion, Mayor. Make a motion to approve the Phase 2 PLF 18197.
I have a motion by the Vice Mayor and to approve, and I have a second by Commissioner Luke. Anything to that, Vice Mayor?
Nothing. Thank you for the presentation and answering the questions.
Commissioner Luke?
Beautiful development, thank you.
Okay, let's take the vote. Fantastic, and that passes 4-0. Thank you.
Mayor, could we take a 5-minute break,
I want to
please?
say, let's take a quick break, and then we'll get back to these last two items.
How long?
Let's see.
10 minutes?
Apparently, we got a 10-minute guy over here.
Well, I got to go downstairs and upstairs.
10-minute break, thank you. Oh, sorry. Okay, now we're taking a break. Okay, we are resuming. Commissioner Luke's on her way. So we're going to move on to general business. Discussion and possible action regarding approval of the 2019 special meeting schedule. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. As you all received, the Vice Mayor provided an email that she did have a question regarding this as far as the special meetings, would like them to start at 1, and I think that it's probably a good idea based on our most recent meetings starting at 4 o'clock. We've had several of them been rescheduled to 1 o'clock, and the quantity of items going forward in the near future, that's probably a good idea anyway, so that they end at a reasonable time frame. But other than that, this is you're being presented with the special meeting schedule for calendar year 2019. These meetings are the ones that are on regularly on the first Thursday of every month. So with that, if you guys have any questions or comments, we're here.
Commissioner McDowell.
Yeah, since this is general business, Mayor, can we just, if there's questions and combine comments at the same time, so that, because I don't have questions, I guess I can form it in a question. Right. The Thursday meetings are called a special meeting, and City Attorney, since these are regularly scheduled, is there a reason we're calling it a special meeting? Can we just call it a commission meeting?
I think there was a specific reason we called it that, wasn't there?
Maybe a long time ago it was because these meetings didn't happen regularly.
Well, I thought it had to do with what we put on it.
It originally started as a special meeting and have been called that because originally they were just to take the proclamations and presentations and put them on that meeting to try to shorten these meetings. And it worked temporarily.
But we elongated that meeting.
Now we have elongated that meeting and added other things to it. I believe at this point in time, the only reason it may be still considered a special meeting is we don't necessarily always have all of the areas and the numbering. But I don't, as far as, we have, one of the things that's on there is we have time specific for proclamations. Not whether we have a general business. We started adding that, so I think it's kind of undone now at this point anyway. But the only thing that's special about it at this point is that the proclamations are at a time specific. I don't know that as long as we wanted to continue that practice, everybody knew that the proclamations are still going to be then. I don't know that there's a special need for it to still be considered a special meeting.
So there's no legal provision saying that it's a commission meeting starting at 1 o'clock, time certain, proclamations at 4.
I'll let the city attorney get on that. The only other question that would enter my head charter-wise is regular commission meetings are talked about in the charter as being on specific dates.
Yeah.
And
that might have been the other reason we kept it as that too. It seemed like there was what we put on it. We wanted to make sure that we weren't limited or something to.
So I'm looking at I don't have the new charter.
I have it right here.
On page 11.
Thank you.
Thank you. I didn't get a copy.
We'll make sure city attorney gets one.
I have a couple in my office.
Okay, it says city commission shall meet at a such time and place as prescribed by ordinance, except that it shall meet regularly, not less than once each month, but not in the not in the month of August. All meetings shall be public except provided by state law. All meetings shall be public. At meetings, the public shall have the right to be heard.
And then it says if you have more than one meeting in any month, at least one meeting shall be scheduled to begin after 5 p.m.
Correct.
In our city code, there's an administrative provision related to meetings, and regular meetings, just mentions are held at City Hall, that this commission shall meet regularly not less than once a month, except in the month of August. Then if there's more than one held in a given month, it's consistent with what the charter says essentially. So then it goes on to special meetings. I mean, generally speaking, in the parlance, a regular meeting is one that's scheduled like the first Thursday of every month. And a special meeting, is something that kind of pops up from time to time as needed. So I don't if you were to ask me to name these meetings, I would name them regular meetings. I don't know that there's really a legal prohibition one way or the other as to what you call them.
Thank you.
As long as you're having regular, meetings that are called regular meetings that meet the definition in the charter.
But can't we
Right.
call it a special meeting? And
Yeah, but there's nothing
and then
wrong
if we
with keeping
don't
it a
need to have one at 1 o'clock, then we don't have it.
That's what I think, too.
But if we don't have it at 1 o'clock, we can cancel it. It just, when citizens hear special meeting, they are thinking we are calling this because we have something special and unique that we need to discuss. And these are just regularly scheduled. There's really nothing special about it.
Well, and the fact that hopefully as we get through this year, it'll become a special meeting. That's my hope. So I would rather not call it a regular meeting and then get in our mindset that it is.
I wouldn't want to have a third one.
And I think if we do
But we've been
that,
here for 2 years and we have not missed one Thursday meeting.
well, I also have been running these meetings. So
Well,
I'm just teasing, but.
No, you're not.
no, you're not.
I
You
was
are
just-
not.
I'm just trying to soften the moment.
Because we, just even today, we added something to a Thursday meeting.
I just think
So-
we're overthinking it. I personally don't think it's a big deal the way it is. I think if we have to change it, then that's just adding something we gotta do. And right now,
Now is the time to change it.
yeah.
It's a commission meeting. It's not a special meeting.
No, no.
A special meeting is those first Mondays of the month.
Yeah, it's gonna become a special.
Those are special meetings.
The reason we had special meetings was when there was those long, like the youth council, something that was special that we really wanted to have a workshop. I mean, that is basically what we did, was renamed it special meeting instead of workshop. And it was supposed to be those special items that were going to take a lot of time. And we put them on at the 1 o'clock time.
And I think
And
what
then
happened,
it became regular
what's
stuff.
happened is,
put on.
is exactly what I mentioned when we first started pulling this up, and I pulled out the personal wallet, and it's just become a bigger purse. We just keep adding to it because we keep giving ourselves space to add to it, so we keep adding to it. I say we stick with the way we are. I personally say we stick with the way we are. We move forward, and hopefully we won't need those meetings moving forward. I like to think in the positive fashion that we are moving efficiently, we're getting things done and moving efficiently. I just don't want to give place work, because I think when you do, we've already seen that we make that place. But that's my suggestion.
Well, what we did after starting some of the meetings at 1, we said, we'll save the first Monday of every month too for special meetings.
Or
Workshop.
That's what those
Well,
first
that's-
Mondays are.
Yeah, it's supposed to be workshops, but because some didn't like the term, it was called special meeting. But,
So,
Exactly.
That is true. It was.
Yeah, so Mondays are the special meeting / workshop, and Thursdays are a commission meeting.
presentation meetings.
but because of time, because some
they-
commissioners didn't want to devote an extra day, so they said, well, why don't we just
For the,
Add to that day.
put it on, extra time that day? And I would rather do that. I mean, we're already going to come together
Well,
at
that's-
4 o'clock anyhow, so I'd rather put the extra time on the Thursday than add a workshop on a Monday, unless it's absolutely necessary.
and if you remember, the Thursday special meetings, not this year that we're in right now, but last year, you all had decided to start them at 1, and then it wasn't happening regularly, or we were getting done so quickly, we were breaking between the 1 and the 4 o'clock time specific. So we got rid of that, and you all said to just have it at 1 o'clock if needed. And as in the last few months, it's been needed more and more in order to help us get out of here before the next day starts. So that's why I believe the idea was mentioned, to bring it back to 1 on a regular basis. I don't think, I will tell you brutally honestly, my only concern with putting the workshop type meeting that's supposed to be on the first Monday, combining it with this, is too many hours together. Starts to get punchy towards the end. And if we were to start that at 9 in the morning like those meetings do, and add it to this one that's starting at 1. Those workshops, some of them, I try to limit the amount of things that we can have on there, because really more than 2 or 3 of those type of items, and it starts to become ineffective.
Right.
And I don't want this meeting to also become ineffective by limiting that one to only a couple hours.
Yeah, and I totally agree that it should start at 1 o'clock. The Thursday meeting should start at 1 o'clock. I was just merely suggesting changing it from a special meeting to a commission meeting, because it has been and will continue to be regularly scheduled, just because it's proclamations and recognition and presentations on that same day. That's all that I was trying to get across.
Thank you. City Clerk?
The only thing I wanted to make note is everybody was aware that the July meeting is not happening the first Thursday of the month. I moved it to the second Thursday, but we can change that if that's not agreeable to everybody.
I think it was
It'd be
because of the
difficult to
holiday,
change it to the
right?
first Thursday, though, because it's the 4th of July.
Yeah,
And
it's a
I don't think-
holiday.
I mean, if you all want to not attend the Freedom Festival, we could have.
No, we could have it here.
Fireworks and all.
Fireworks
over
and
there.
One way to get people to attend the commission meeting.
I thought the schedules looked good.
I'll make a motion, Mayor. I'm gonna see how it flies. I'm gonna make a motion to approve the schedule for the Thursday meetings, changing the start time to 1 PM and changing the name of the meeting to commission meeting.
Second? Motion dies to the lack of a second. Let's make another motion.
I'll make another motion. I tried. I'll make another motion to approve the schedule for Thursday's meetings as presented, changing the time from 4 PM to 1 PM for our special meeting schedule for 2019.
Second.
Can I ask a question? Because it still qualifies as a special meeting, if we don't need that 1 o'clock meeting, it can be canceled, correct?
Can it be canceled at 1 o'clock?
Because it's still labeled special meeting, if we don't really need, if we don't have anything to go on at a 1 o'clock time, we can cancel it and just have the 4 o'clock presentation, correct?
Correct.
Because it's special meeting, okay, thank you.
Just be a rescheduling, wouldn't it?
Yep.
Thank you.
All right.
Can I ask a follow-up
Yes,
question?
please.
City Attorney, do we need to specify the time certain for proclamations and recognitions, or is that understood?
There's no legal issue with respect to that.
So it's kind of like understood that it's a 4 o'clock proclamation, time certain.
Or do you want an amendment?
That just depends on what you all want to tell the public. If you want everyone in the public to know it's at 4 o'clock, that's fine. If the chair is amenable to stopping what's happening at 4 o'clock without it being required on the agenda to do proclamations.
I'll make an amendment that the proclamation portion of the first Thursday's meeting be time certain at 4 o'clock.
I'll second.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything to that? We're good? Let's go ahead and take the vote on the amendment to the motion. And that passes 4-0. Let's go ahead and make a vote, take a vote on the main motion. And the motion passes 4-0. Moving on. Business discussion and possible action regarding the districts and commission regular meeting schedule for 2019. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. This is the schedule for the regular meetings for next year. The proposed schedule has some slight tweaks to it, as we do every year, as in, you'll notice in the staff summary the dates of the National League of Cities that's in Washington, D.C. It's scheduled this year from March 10th to the 13th, so the first meeting, the first regular scheduled meeting is scheduled for March 5th instead of the second Tuesday. Obviously, like every year, there's no meetings in August, and I believe those are the only adjustments on this at this point in time.
On this schedule, the March 26th meeting needs to be changed because that is a Florida League of Cities legislative days. So we need to either eliminate it or we need to change it to the 19th.
I think we've gone both ways in the past of sometimes eliminating it, sometimes going both ways. I can tell you you're likely to have plenty of meetings in March anyway. Typically, we have the start of our budget meetings start, and then you could always add stuff to those if we needed to, if you wanted to cancel that meeting. If you do cancel it, I would recommend moving the districts to still allow them on either March 5th or April 9th, so that you don't go 2 months without having one.
Right.
Could we do the district meeting at 12, on the 12th? Or is that too soon after the prior one?
On the what? I'm sorry.
12th? Or is that, it's only 2 weeks?
NLC Congressional
I'm
Conference.
sorry,
NLC.
on the 5th. That's only a week after the last one. Forget
I'd
that
probably
idea.
rather have it April
Yeah.
9th.
April 9th? Okay.
Have a motion? I see no more.
I just-
Oh, sorry.
One more thought, and I know that our mayor is going to speed these meetings up considerably, but since we're here at 1 o'clock on the second Tuesday of the month, sometimes they may run later after the 5 o'clock. Do we want to start those at 10? And that way then we have a better chance of getting out at 5? Or even sooner than 5?
I would say we look at that at kind of a case-by-case basis. You know, like as we're getting closer, you'll know, and we'll all know, and then we can have, the meeting prior, we can have them, or a couple meetings prior. We'll know kind of what's coming up the pipeline.
We'll know what's on it. The only, and again, this is a case-by-case basis, is if you start them at 5, and for instance, like today, we would have had to adjourn the districts, open the regular,
Right.
And then
That's-
adjourn it. But yeah, on a case-by-case basis, that might just work fine. But
Yeah, because then we can make that decision a couple of meetings ahead of time, and then we kind of know, and then everything's planned out. And it'll be your responsibility to let us know what's coming up so that we can make that decision. What do you think?
I was just suggesting to start it at 10 o'clock. I know the prior commission had them start at 10 o'clock. It seemed to work well, and it got done sooner. You're just putting it at the beginning of the day as opposed to staying late at the end of the day. Not adding items, that's not what my intention is. It's to, instead of having staff stay after 5 o'clock, that they might be out before 5 as opposed to staying until 8, 9, or 10.
So you're talking about the second Tuesday?
Only the
starting
second
at 10.
Tuesday. Only the second
I
Tuesday.
like that.
5 p.m.
No, having it start at
Excuse
10,
me, I'm sorry, you're right. Yeah, at 10 a.m.
at 10 a.m. The
yeah.
second Tuesday, the fourth Tuesday stays at 6 o'clock for regular commission meeting and district at 4. That fourth Tuesday stays exactly the same. I'm just talking about the second Tuesday starting at 10 o'clock.
Fine.
So instead of starting at 1, starting at 10.
Correct.
Right.
Take a half hour for lunch or 45
Yeah,
minutes for lunch.
I'm personally
and
fine. I mean, yeah.
And then-
Yeah, I'm good with days we've already got.
It's the same days. I'm just changing it from 1, suggesting to change it from 1 to 10. That way then we have a much better chance of getting out by 5 for staff, for ourselves, for our citizens. Not saying to add anything to the meeting,
I'm not
just to
going to.
continue with the agendas as,
I'm even good with 9. That way you
well,
got
we have
3 hours.
we have a commissioner that needs her coffee. She doesn't,
Coffee pot right there.
Drink it at 8:30.
so.
Have you seen her at 8:30?
Yes, we have. That's why I said 10. That's why I suggested 10.
You feel that works great for staff and all that?
I do.
Okay. Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Well, and I think even if we do end up staying later than 5, we're not staying till
Till
9,
9 or 10 o'clock,
You know,
exactly.
it may be 6, something like that, or a
Exactly.
little bit later. No, I understand. I agree with that.
Let's make a motion.
All right, I'll make a motion to approve the schedule as presented with the following changes. Moving the district meeting for March 26th to April 9th. eliminating the commission meeting for March 26th in its entirety and changing only the second Tuesday of the month's meetings to 10 a.m., leaving the district meetings and commission meeting for the fourth Tuesday of the month at 4 and 6 respectively. 4 p.m. for the district, 6 p.m. for the commission, meetings on the fourth Tuesday.
Second?
Second.
Got a motion on the floor by Vice Mayor. I've got a second by Commissioner Emmerich. Vice Mayor?
No, I think that this will work. We'll see. We got a year, and if we need to change it mid-year, well, then we can always do that too.
My problem is,
1 second.
that's only one.
Commissioner Emmerich.
Yes, sir.
Do you have anything you want to say to the motion?
No.
Okay. Commissioner Luke?
Problem that I have is we only have one regular meeting in March then.
That's right, and that's all.
March is huge with
Well, that's
stuff
what he
that
was
we
talking
have.
about with the budgets and all that. We have a lot of,
We have two. We have our special meeting on Thursday. We possibly have a Monday meeting for workshops or a special meeting, and then we have our regular commission meeting, and charter requires one meeting at least a month.
I know it requires it, but then you've got a gap, huge gap.
we can always schedule though if we need to.
City manager didn't seem to think that was a problem.
We've done it before.
I'm
Yeah.
not concerned with it, whether he does.
I know, I'm just.
I can tell you that if there appears to be any issues, we would attempt to schedule a meeting around your calendars towards the end of March. I know that what the Florida League of Cities days are. I believe this just came out. I'm not sure if they're, I think they're the 26th to the 28th. If I'm remembering right.
Those 2 weeks, we have NLC and FLC,
Yep.
like back to back.
Yep.
And that's why it's being moved up to the 5th. The first one's being moved up to the 5th. And then we're not going to have another regular meeting for the public meetings until a month
the
later.
4th.
Till the 9th of
Till
April.
the 4th
4th of what?
of April. It's the first Thursday.
I have April 9th.
No, I'm talking about a public meeting
Well, what's
such
the
as
first
this.
Thursday of the month? The public can come to that.
Well, now, it could have been a public meeting if you'd have just voted with.
They're all
Vice
public
Mayor.
meetings. City attorney, aren't they all public?
Now all of a sudden, the
meetings?
name matters.
What?
All the commission meetings are public.
There is just something sacred to me about those scheduled public meetings, that they come, the citizens can come and they can speak. The cards and that, it is scheduled for those times. Everybody knows it's those times.
Make an
It's
amendment to
just-
the 19th.
I'm willing to make an amendment to it if you guys,
Make the motion.
all right, move to amend the motion, making a second regular commission meeting on the 19th of March.
Second. Oh,
I think it was,
Oh, so I have an amendment to the motion by Commissioner Luke. I have a second by Vice Mayor, Commissioner Luke. Anything you want to say?
I just appreciate it knowing that it is scheduled. I know, well, it's 2 weeks in between, so at least we can get our work done without trying to schedule stuff last minute. It's going to be in the record, and everybody's going to know that's when the meeting is.
Yeah, you good?
thanks for making the
Nobody else?
motion.
Let's take a vote on the amendment. Passes 4-0. Now to the main motion. That passes 4-0. Moving on to consent, we have, oh, what?
Can I ask a question? When does the 10 o'clock go into effect?
January 1st.
January? Okay.
Do we need to put the schedule out for the Monday workshop / special meetings that we have a hold? They're just a hold. That way then we have it on our calendars for 2019. I think we should probably keep that as a hold so we don't run into problems like last year.
I mean, it's a hold. If we need them, we got them. If we don't.
Do we need
That's not- Keep them
to,
in person, so.
we need to advise the city clerk of that? Want a consensus, or do you want a motion?
No, let's get a consensus. Do we have a consensus to do as the Vice Mayor said?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I'm good.
And that
too.
hold is for the first
Yeah.
Monday of each month.
First Monday of each month. And it's only a hold.
It's just a tentative, yeah.
Yeah, it's only a hold, and they'll let us know. So it's at least in our calendars.
Okay, so we're going to move on to consent. We only have 2 items that were pulled. Let's see. I need a motion to approve the consent.
I'll move to approve consent agenda items A, C, D, F, G, and H.
I'll second.
I have a motion by Commissioner Luke with a second by Vice Mayor. Let's vote. The purchase of one replacement Ford F-350 for an estimated total of $38,515.99 from Beck Auto Sales. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to turn this one actually over to Commissioner McDowell to make her statement.
Oh, fantastic.
Forward.
Thank you. So I know you've heard this a couple of times already in different meetings, so for the record, I'm going to say the same thing. Hopefully someday other commissioners will understand my concern about purchasing vehicles before their time. So I've met with the assistant city manager and the city manager about my concerns regarding the inconsistencies of the repair history logs and the validity of the score sheets. The city manager appears to agree with those concerns and gave me assurances he will be getting these concerns resolved. Because I cannot be 100% sure that these vehicles are needing this immediate replacement, I will not be approving this vehicle replacement.
See no other speakers. Can we get a motion?
The thingy's gone, let me see here, there we go.
There it is.
Move to accept consent agenda item B.
I have a second. Second. I have a motion by Commissioner Luke, a second by Commissioner Emmerich. Anything to that, Commissioner Luke?
No, sir.
Commissioner Emmerich? All right, let's take the vote. And that passes 3-1 with Commissioner McDowell abstaining for reasons stated.
I did not abstain, Mayor. I
Or
voted no.
not abstain, I mean voted no, sorry. For reasons stated?
Yes.
Well, I see the big word that says
I know.
I would like to say that each of these vehicles on this agenda have come in at a lower cost than what was budgeted.
And then now we have consent item E, appointment of Arthur Landry as a non-voting member to the Public Utility Advisory Board. Commissioner McDowell, you pulled it?
I did. I pulled it because I noticed that Mr. Landry and city attorney may have to help us in getting this resolved, that he is a non-voting member. And I'm wondering, why would somebody sit on this board and not be able to vote on things that are before them?
Information. Advisory.
The way the board is set up. Because they're not a resident of the city, they just use the
We have a
utility.
lot of other boards that don't have residents on them, that they get to vote.
That don't have residents on, I'm not following.
They are not residents of the city, and they sit on boards, on our advisory boards, and they get to vote.
Well, I thought our boards have a requirement of like 1 year or 6 months. Like
Yeah,
every board we
resident-
have has
yeah,
some
that-
form of
This is the
requirement.
only one that hasn't, that I
Doesn't
believe.
this, the CDAB board have non-residents that vote?
I know they have non-residents. I believe they get to vote. I'm not positive. I would not quote me on that. But I do know that they have non-residents. I don't know if they're voting or non-voting off the top of my head.
I'm just curious why we want to get people to sit on our boards, and if they can't vote, but they can only participate, but they don't get to vote, I don't understand the reasoning behind it.
Vice Mayor McDowell, there are a couple of ordinances that will be coming before the commission, that the commission has directed. One of them has to go through PZAB, which is why you haven't seen it yet. We're waiting to bring them both together, where you all, I think at a workshop or a special meeting, directed some changes to come back to the code related to the advisory boards. And if memory serves me correctly, one of those changes is to allow, I think, one seat on each board. It's a non-resident or
A property
there's some
owner.
changes to that.
Right, a property owner rather than.
Right, a property owner.
And then they have voting rights on the advisory board.
So
just as a reminder, I've seen that recently, but you haven't, so it's fresh in my mind.
So by approving this as a non-voting member, if this ordinance that's coming before us at some point in the future, which one holds the higher hierarchy if it can become a voting member? Is it grandfathered in that he stays a non-voting member, or does he become a voting member once that new ordinance is passed?
We just have to look at the language, and it depends on the language that the commission adopts in the ordinance as well. I mean, once it comes to you for first reading and second reading, you might have changes to it. So, as for now, if this gentleman is approved, he'll be in this non-voting member slot on the Public Utility Advisory Board.
Do you know when we're going to be seeing that new ordinance, city attorney or city manager?
Are you saying you didn't read my city attorney report?
I'll get punchy after a certain amount of hours.
You caught me.
It's usually 5, and we're only 3 into this.
Yeah, give me a second. It's in there. But I wrote it, and I don't remember what it says, so that shows you that I can't expect anyone else to remember it better than I did. January.
Okay. All right.
I'll make a motion that we approve consent agenda E.
I'll second.
Got a motion by Commissioner Luke, seconded by Vice Mayor. Anything to the motion, Commissioner?
If, when this comes back about the advisory boards, we can address any of the non-voting members at that point in time to see if we do want to do that. But I want to say thank you to this gentleman. He actually comes from Island Walk. So I appreciate him getting involved.
He's in Island Walk. He's a resident, so why wouldn't he be?
7 years.
Why would he be a non-voting member? He's a citizen of, I'm.
Chose to be. Chose to be.
That was.
I may be looking at the wrong one.
I think you are.
Let me see.
I believe he lives in the
Holiday.
Yes.
I think it's Holiday Park.
Holiday, okay.
I was like,
I had the wrong one pulled up.
Thank you.
I was going to say, he does say he lived there for 7 years.
I remember seeing that.
Yeah, I saw somebody from Island Walk had
Thank you.
submitted. I was thinking it was them.
Okay. So, correct that question.
So it was from which park? Who was, where was
I
it
don't
from?
remember which park, but I know it's a mobile home park outside of the city.
Oh, it was
limits.
the Mayaca one. I do remember reading that. Okay, thank you.
So no other
Kind of all went
questions?
together.
Let's take the vote. And that passes 4-0. We'll move on to commission communications. Commissioner Emmerich, do you have anything to communicate?
None at this time, sir.
Yeah?
I had something from the road and drainage that I wanted to just get the will of the body. Price Boulevard signs that are up. My goodness. You would not think that little signs would cause so much havoc, but people are complaining that their signs are causing them not to be able to sell their house.
What signs?
On Price.
Are the ones that
say coming soon. And I know it was this commission that said, put the signs up to alert everybody that this construction project is coming. It does say coming soon. Coming, gotcha. Yeah, they're reading the soon.
on purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we did it to
advise. Well, to advise, we also did it to maybe hinder some of the building going on. However, some of these model home people realize we can hurry up and build a home and our property becomes exponentially more expensive if they want to do anything. So let's build these model homes.
So I don't know if we want to keep them up or if we want to have staff take them down. I just am approaching the subject.
Yeah. I don't think it's had the effect that we were wanting. And, I mean,
I've received one email.
Yeah.
You all received the same thing that I did. But probably that was the intent, to make sure that it would stop people from being able to come in and say,
I had no idea.
I bought this property.
Right.
And like I said, the word soon was intentionally left off because
soon is relative with.
Exactly.
We're not sure what soon is.
Yeah.
Yep, and since, your definition and mine might be different of that word, we chose to leave the word off, but we did want people to know, you buying a property here,
Yeah.
we didn't want you coming in and saying, I didn't know. So that's the reason for the signs.
Remember that.
That is true, and I also remember, though, it had to do with trying to hinder some of the
Development.
building and the development. So it is having that effect, apparently, which is exactly what we were looking for on half of it.
So keep them up? Yeah, okay.
Commissioner Luke?
Yeah, I'm good with them staying.
Okay,
Or you mean,
yeah, Commission, oh, yeah. Yeah, are you good with them staying?
Oh, absolutely.
All right, so, yeah.
is that all you had, Commissioner McDowell?
Oh, I'm done, yeah. I have a few other things, but in the essence of time, Mayor.
Oh, no, I wasn't trying to rush you. I thought you were done.
I want to know what the over-under is so I can either help you or get a. I have no idea what it is. I just figured there has to be on his first meeting.
You have anything else?
No, I attended the Homeless to Home luncheon, and it's always very informative, the things I learn. And thank you to staff for the help with the Almost Sunrise flyer. Thank you, Pete. That's it. Thank you.
Luke?
Attended the National League of City and the Florida League of City. Phenomenal training, learning, classes. I mean, just phenomenal. Recycling was one of the classes that I sat in on with the National League of City, and that recycling is just atrocious everywhere. So we've got a huge agenda before us. The Florida League of City, even though when I brought up about water quality being our legislative item, it was kind of poo-pooed on in September. Well, when October came and red tide went around three sides of the state, everybody, it was almost unanimous when we went the other week who wanted water quality addressed. So that committee is making that a legislative priority and following up with some other things too, but that is the main thrust, is water. And requesting the state not only for legislative, but some money. We get money for road systems, but not for water systems, so why not? So we're taxed through water districts, but the federal or the state doesn't help like they do with the road systems. So it takes a village. Truly takes a village to conquer some of these issues that have been ignored for 2 decades that I'm aware of. So thank you, and thank you for allowing the presenter to come. And Northport has an opportunity to kick this wide open with a resolution that will be passed everywhere. So thank you.
I did attend the Florida League of Cities and this last week, and some fantastic training going on there. But one thing that I was quite amazed about was the vice mayor brought forth an agenda to her groups, talking about DCF and the children, and it was just phenomenal, the data she had. And I hope, and I think I asked, but I don't know, I hadn't seen it. Hopefully she can provide us that PowerPoint that she had, or the data that she had, because it was just fascinating to hear her talk. And then and then when I left, just the line of people, there were at least a dozen people just waiting to ask her questions. So it was just a phenomenal presentation, and I wanted to acknowledge her for that. But that's all I have. City Clerk?
I have nothing, thank you.
The Attorney?
Nothing, Mayor.
City Manager?
Sorry, but I do have two things.
Maybe one.
Well, one relates to the city clerk, so I'm going to toss that one her way, but no, she has no idea it's coming. So the two things. One is I wanted some clarification on when we presented you guys with the calendar for legislative priorities. One of the items on there was the Sarasota voting delegation that happens in July of every year. We're just curious if you all wanted staff to present the city's legislative priorities at that, or if commission wanted to present them.
July?
It's thought it looked up. January.
Thank you.
Sorry.
I was going to say it's all done with by then.
So in January, whether you want it to the Sarasota voting delegation, do you want us to handle presenting that to them, or do you all want to present it to them?
The mayor usually do that? I know Vice Mayor did it 2 years in a row.
I believe that is correct.
Personally, I would like to see the mayor and the city manager go together
Mhm.
and jointly present as a unified front.
Yeah.
And I'm
I
perfectly
like that
fine with
idea.
that. We're just looking for the direction of which way you want it to go.
Yeah, I like that idea.
Okay?
Good.
Lucky you. You get to spend time with me.
Stay right in front of you.
You're going to advise us as to when that is, so we as a commission body can attend too.
Right now, the date's still to be determined.
Gotcha.
So we will.
And you will keep us posted as to,
Yes, ma'am. The second one is a little more substantive. The deputy city clerk position. You all had instructed, and I know it sounds clear, to handle it the way that we handled it last time as far as what HR did. But the question was raised after the meeting. Right now, we've received all of the applicants. We're doing the background check, and we have the applicants scheduled for the testing that we did. Question was, when you said do it the way you did it last time, did you mean last time as in with the city clerk, where everybody was sent to you all? Or the way we did it with the deputy city clerk when we hired Katie to be in that position, where they actually were pre-interviewed by the existing city clerk and HR? And then you were given, I think, the top 4, however many there were, and you guys said a number. So we wanted to know which, the way it was handled last time, did you mean?
that's a very
I like
good
the
point.
second one.
I like the one that we did with the assistant. I mean, yeah.
We can
Yeah,
have-
give us the top handful, the top 3 or 4.
After
and-
she interviews?
Yeah, because I think it's important for her to be able to work with them.
Patsy and HR that did a screening of them. They interviewed them and presented you with the top, I believe it was 4, right? I'm pretty sure you interviewed
Look at how
4.
well that worked.
So
We got Katie.
that, if you're looking for a recommendation, that was going to be mine, but it's your position, and we just want to know which way you all wanted it to happen.
I like that.
Consensus for that?
Yeah, absolutely.
So we have a consensus to do like we did with the deputy clerk whenever we
So
hired
Ms. Katie is going to do a pre-interview and then we pick.
And then we'll get the top 3 or
top
4.
4, and then we'll do, okay.
Yep. Do I have a consensus for that?
Yes.
Yes, yes?
Yes.
Okay, there you go.
And that's what we'll do. That's all I had.
That's it. Meeting adjourned.
Good job, Mayor.